So I hope everybody had a good lunch, and now we're ready for the next examination. The secretary should give, someone asked for the time, so the secretary can give you the time as it stands now.
The claimant has 3 hours and 28 minutes left. The respondent has 2 hours and 34 minutes left.
Fine, so we can start with the examination of the claimant's quantum expert. For the record, can you please confirm to us that you're Vicky Wall?
I am Vicky Wall.
Thank you. You're managing director at Kroll Expert Services?
Not quite. I resigned from Kroll in December, and I'm now a consultant to Kroll. I have set up my own independent consultancy, but for this case, I have got a subcontract with Kroll, so I'm acting in the same position.
So your present position is a consultant, and you have your own consultancy firm, is that right?
I am a partner in a practice I have set up with two other ex-Kroll colleagues, and we are an independent forensic accountancy boutique.
And what is the name of your new firm?
It's called Accounting Valuation Experts, LLP.
Accounting Valuation Experts. Good, thank you. You have provided us with two expert reports. The first one was dated the 2nd of July 2021, and the second one the 4th of August 2022.
That is correct.
And I see you have your reports with you, and they're unannotated.
That's correct.
You're heard as an expert witness. As an expert witness, you're under duty to make only statements in accordance with your sincere belief. Can you please confirm that this is what you intend to do?
Would you like me to read my declaration?
Yes, please.
I solemnly declare, upon my honour and conscience, that my statement will be in accordance with my sincere belief.
Thank you. So now we have a presentation in lieu of direct examination, and you have a maximum of 20 minutes. Is that right? Should have checked that before. 20 minutes, yes, absolutely. So we're ready to listen. And I should say that we have received the presentation by email.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Madam President, members of the Tribunal. Before I set out my views on the quantum of loss I calculated, I would first like to briefly summarise my credentials for you. I am a chartered accountant, having trained as an auditor, opining on the reasonableness of company financial statements. I have over 25 years' experience quantifying losses in arbitrations and litigation. My experience includes valuing many different businesses, assets and projects in investment treaty and commercial and contractual disputes, including in the mining industry. My more detailed CV is attached to my first report. I frequently opine on the valuation of assets and use the valuation approach most appropriate to the circumstances. For example, whilst acting for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in an investment treaty dispute brought against it by Samsung, my primary valuation approach was based on the historical cost of the investment and considering the appropriate return. As another example, when acting for the investor in a case it brought against the state of Mauritius, my primary valuation was based on the historical cost of the investment and considering an appropriate return. However, in many other mining and valuation cases, I often use other primary approaches, such as relying on a discounted cash flow. I will now explain my views on the key points that I considered in quantifying the loss suffered by Winshear due to the respondents' actions in turn. First, valuation date. I was instructed by Winshear's counsel to adopt a valuation date of 18th December 2019, although practically I used the end of December 2019 as a proxy in my calculations. Mr. Mangakala opined in his report that the correct date is 10th of July 2018, although I understand this has subsequently been corrected to 10th of January 2018. So I have additionally valued the S&P Gold project at this alternative date of 10th of January 2018 using my valuation approach. Market value is important here. Mr. Mangakala and I both seek to value the S&P Gold project based on its fair market value. I consider the definition of market value, which I take from the International Valuation Standards, the IVS, being the estimated amount for which an asset or liability should exchange on the valuation date between a willing buyer and a willing seller in an arm's length transaction after proper marketing and where the parties had each acted knowledgeably, prudently, and without compulsion. I emphasize the need for a willing seller and for a sale without compulsion after proper marketing, which I will shortly come back to. My approach to valuation. In order to arrive at the fair market value of the S&P Gold project, I considered which of the three main valuation methods typically used to derive the fair market value of assets would be most appropriate here. I considered, but in the end did not use, the market approach, that based on a comparison to similar companies or transactions typically using the EV resources or reserve multiples. It's because I didn't consider it appropriate for this project. The project was at an advanced exploration stage, but did not have obvious comparables to use at the valuation date. I considered, but did not use the income approach based on estimating future cash flows. Again, I didn't consider it appropriate as the project was not yet generating income. I therefore used the cost approach, the remaining approach, estimating the value using both the historical costs spent on creating the project and a typical financial return expected. This is consistent with the recommendations of mining industry standards. So, what did I conclude with the historical costs incurred by the claimant on the S&P Gold project? The total cost was just over 46 million Canadian dollars. The majority of this expense was the exploration costs incurred, costs of drilling, surveys, field expenses, and so on. But I've also included just over 1.6 million of license acquisition costs and other directly related expenses without which the exploration activity could not have incurred. That's at about $11.2 million. My source of these costs were Winshear's consolidated financial statements. These were audited, that is, annually reviewed and tested by an independent firm of accountants. I did look at and use the interim quarterly reports, which were not audited, but that was simply to include the costs and income within the appropriate quarter they were incurred. In addition, I conducted some sample testing of underlying invoices and underlying company accounting records for 1 year, 2015, which were provided to me by Winshear's counsel. And that showed me that the financial statements and underlying records were consistent with each other in that year. So I consider the amount included within the financial statements is an accurate and complete record and the best source to use for the accurately recorded cost of the claimant, Winshear, formerly Helio, that relate to the S&P Gold project. And I understand that Winshear no longer has any benefit from these costs, so all such costs are appropriate to include within the claim. Looking at this in a little bit more detail. First, the exploration costs. On the left-hand side here is an example of the disclosure of exploration costs that you can see in the notes in the financial statements. And the notes will also have been audited by the independent accountants in each of the annual financial statements. On the right-hand side is my analysis. In my appendix, I have added up the exploration costs for each year to get to the total amount of such costs to include within my valuation. It is Mr. Williams's evidence and the claimant's case that the retention licenses, that without the retention licenses, the prospecting licenses also had no value. Therefore, I considered it appropriate, in line with my instructions, to include all costs incurred in Tanzania in my valuation of the S&P Gold project. The acquisition of licenses can similarly be clearly seen in the financial statements. I have an example of the Helio consolidated financial statements on the left-hand side. And I again simply added up the amount in each period to get to the total to include within my valuation. I also looked at the other costs incurred by Winshear or Helio in addition to the exploration costs, and these are also clearly set out in the financial statements, the disclosure on the very left-hand side. These include accounting and audit fees, bank charges, consulting fees, head office running costs, travel costs, filing agent fees, and wages and salaries. I looked to include the costs which were necessarily incurred for the exploration activity to be able to operate, such as professional fees, the fees of auditors, for example, and I have reduced it by any income, such as interest income received. I needed to do 2 steps in order to calculate the amount of such costs that I considered appropriate in relation to the S&P Gold project. First, I excluded any costs that weren't related to Tanzania, for example, related to other exploration, and those that weren't appropriate, for example, non-cash items, amortization or depreciation, which are clearly appropriate to include in financial statements, but I didn't include them as cash items in my valuation. I then looked to include the amount relevant to the S&P Gold project, either the entire amount, if that was clearly related to S&P, or based on the ratio of the exploration costs of the S&P Gold project in relation to the total exploration costs from that year. And I used this ratio multiplied by the total costs in that year in order to give a reasonable approximation of the additional costs and additional income relating to the S&P Gold project, which should be included in the valuation. This is an extract from IVS, in fact IVS 105, which summarises the cost elements to include in a cost approach valuation. You can clearly see the reference to direct costs and to indirect costs. And at the end of the list of indirect costs, there's also a consideration of the profit margin or return to investors on the costs. I consider that it was appropriate to include such a return in my valuation of the S&P Gold project, as this was the reason that the investors invested in the S&P Gold project. Using the concepts of a willing buyer and a willing seller expects a return on the costs incurred for the risk taken, and a willing buyer expects to pay for the time saved and the de-risking arising from the seller's investments. This approach of adding a return to costs is equivalent to an accepted method for valuing mining projects when they're in their exploration stage, as set out in the SIMVAL code for the valuation of mining properties. Sorry, SIMVAL being the Canadian Institute of Mining, Metallurgy and Petroleum, and their valuation standards. I set out an extract on the right here of the SIMVAL code. This approach is called the multiple of exploration expenditure, or MEE method, and it applies a multiple called the PEM, the Prospectivity Enhancement Multiplier, to give it its full name, to the historical costs. Now, studies have shown that the typical multiple ranges from about half to 3, but a use of a multiplier over 1 is clearly equivalent to a return on costs that set out under IVS. And I set out here a suggested rationale for the level of the multiplier. This was published by a specialist geology consultancy with the details in my report. You can see, for example, that projects at a well-advanced exploration stage, the multiplier would be between 2.5 and 9. And 3, as I think was shown this morning to Professor Maruma, is where resource is defined, but there is no pre-feasibility study. The numbers can go higher than 3, far higher, but typically they range between 0.5 and 3. So what did I do? So I have provided a range of returns. So I've set out on the slide here my return and the fair market value. And then in the final column, I have provided the cross-check, the implied multiple of the PEM. At the lower risks of investment, I've considered a return at a rate of 2% above the Canadian prime interest rate, being an equivalent return for Winshear as if it had simply left its money in a bank account and earned interest, and at the Tanzanian bond rate, as if Winshear could have made another investment in Tanzania, and this is the yield of Tanzanian bonds. As a cross-check, I consider the implied PEM, and these returns, as you can see on the right-hand side, are equivalent to multipliers under the MEE method of between 1.6 and 1.8. Turning above, you can see here, this 1.6 to 1.8 would fall into the category of where a prospect warrants additional exploration. I've also considered the industry expectations of a return for an early stage gold project of between 8% to 12%. And as you can see on the right-hand side, these are equivalent to multipliers under the MEE method of 2.1 to 3. And looking again at where 2.1 to 3 would be, well-advanced exploration lead to multiples of over 2.5, and as Professor Nomuruma noted this morning, the S&P Gold project would fit into the category with a PEM of 3, or part of it would. So I set out here on the slide and in my report a range of the fair market value for the S&P Gold project based on historical cost and return of between 74 and 140 million Canadian dollars approximately. And I've highlighted in bold a return of just over 116 million Canadian dollars at the midpoint range for an early stage gold project of 10% with an effective PEM of 2.5. In arriving at this appropriate valuation approach to use, I considered whether the proposed arrangement by Shanta to buy Winshear's shares was appropriate, but I concluded in the end that it wasn't appropriate for 4 key reasons. Firstly, from the evidence of Mr. Williams, that that the acceptance of the offer was made under duress because Winshear saw no reasonable alternatives to Shanta's offer given the prevailing conditions at the time. And so I consider that the proposed transaction fails the definition of market value that I read at the start. There wasn't a willing seller, there was no proper marketing, and the sale was made under duress. My second point is, as there was no sale, Shanta withdrew its offer in August 2017. There's no clear way to take the new merged entity that would have been created into account. It would have had increased reserves, leading to increased revenue and increased cost savings of the economies of scale compared to Shanta alone. So if you relied on Shanta's share price alone after the date, as Mr. Mangakala has done, you're not using the correct entity. It wouldn't represent the share price of the merged Shanta Winshear entity in which Winshear would have had shares. The third reason, it was clearly reported by market analysts at that time that Shanta's share price was impacted as a result of the actions of Tanzania, the alleged breach, at the valuation dates. Mr. Mangakala uses Shanta's actual share price at his valuation date as the basis of Winshear's value. Although, as I just said, I don't agree anyway that Shanta's share price is the appropriate basis. In addition, I would consider that this share price was impacted by the market's view of Tanzania's actions. So again, it's simply not appropriate for the but-for value to use Shanta's share price for Winshear's value. And the fourth key reason is that the evidence shows that Winshear's resources were significantly undervalued in relation to Shanta. So relying on the proposed transaction information, as Mr. Mangakala does, meant that too few shares were used as consideration in a but-for approach, not considering the alleged actions. So in conclusion, I didn't consider it appropriate to use the proposed Shanta transaction as a basis, as a fair market value of Winshear, as it fails the IVS accepted definition of market value. The Shanta share price would be the wrong entity to use as a basis. The Shanta share price was anyway impacted by the market's view on Tanzania's actions, and Winshear should have received more shares in the combined entity as consideration in a but-for approach. I therefore used the cost approach for valuation rather than try and speculatively increase or alter the proposed Shanta transaction values, because I ended up, I thought, with a much more reliable valuation estimate for the S&P Gold project. In conclusion, following my valuation at the valuation date of 18th September, I applied pre-award interest. In line with the terms of the investment treaty, pre-award interest is to be applied at a commercially reasonable rate. I've used the Canadian Prime plus 2% as a commercially reasonable rate, and this is also used by the respondents, by Mr. Mangakala. Such interest earned at the Canadian Prime plus premium rate would be compounded each period, and therefore applying a compound interest rather than simple is both commercially reasonable and in line with economic reality, and that is what I have applied. So my calculation, including interest to 31 July 2022, the approximate date of my second report, results in a range of valuation between 83 and 158 million Canadian dollars and at about $131 million based on a 10% rate of return. I had pointed out this morning that I had made an error in my calculation, and I noted it in preparing for my cross-examination today. So, I'm very happy to provide more details, but it only has a small impact. I had previously calculated the 10% rate fair market value at 116.2 million, and it now decreases to 116.1 million. It's not very significant in terms of the entire project. The range, because of the fair market value return, is slightly different at the different dates, but it's of that amount. And finally, I performed my calculation in exactly the same manner, but using the alternative valuation date of 10th of January 2018. And I have again included for your information the value of the implied PEM, the multiple, for cross-check purposes. And I calculate the value here of between 82 and 136 million Canadian dollars. And at 120 million based on a return of 10%. And again, I previously had a fair market value of 94.9 million at a rate of 10%, and my correction has actually increased this slightly to 95.1 million at a return of 10%. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I turn to respondent for cross-examination questions? Dr. Luende, you're the one handling the cross-examination.
Yes, Madam President, we have a team of 4. So my colleague Ipiana Mlilo, Lydia Thomas, Mr. Mandepo, and myself will do the cross-examination, but we start off with Mr. Ipiana, and then we'll be making turns as we go on.
Thank you, Madam President. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Vicky.
Apologies. Good afternoon.
Okay. How are you? I'll be asking you very simple questions. Question number 1. First of all, who engaged you in these arbitration proceedings?
That was the claimant, Winshear Gold Corporation Canada, formerly Helio.
Okay, thank you. And have you been paid? Have you been paid?
I have been paid. for
How
my
much?
work. How much?
Yes.
Up until my last bill, around about just over, I think, 250,000 US dollars for the work in the last 2 years.
Okay, thank you. I refer you to the Appendix A of your report at page 44. Page 44.
Thank you.
Are you there?
I am.
Okay.
It would be easier if you could show it on the screen, yes.
Yes, page
Thank you.
44.
This is my CV
Sure.
as of the date of my first report.
Yeah, sure. And in that page, you have explained that you have worked a number of investment treaty disputes. Is that right?
That is correct.
Sure. But you have not indicated whether you have ever quantified the project in the exploration stage. Do you?
I have in investment treaty disputes. I think I put something up in my first slide. I've had some mining dispute experience, including in the exploration stage, in both commercial disputes and
Can you show us in your CV where you have explained that?
I named some of my investment treaty disputes in my presentation just now, and I have given an example of one where I quantified, but I did not testify because it settled at an earlier stage, halfway down on page 45. Sorry, at the bottom of page 44 this is an early stage. I have not yet testified
Okay, thank you.
on a mining
Okay.
company in East Asia.
Thank you. So, do you agree that this is your first assignment to quantify loss in mineral exploration project?
It's the first time I have testified, but I have quantified before, and I'm in the process of quantifying at exploration stage. But this is the first time that I have testified.
Okay, thank you. Have you ever acted as an expert witness for any government or state?
Yes, I have.
Which state?
As I explained at the start of my presentation, during the COVID time, so I testified virtually, I acted for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and in my Appendix A, I also refer to being appointed by, although it didn't get to the stage, of testifying for Kenya, Barbados, Croatia, and Venezuela.
Okay. Have you indicated in your CV in that way that you have testified on the side of the state?
I have listed the states that I worked for, halfway down page 44. I testified for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia after the date of my CV.
Okay, thank you. I take you to para 1.4.1 of your first report.
Thank you. I have
Are
it.
you there?
I am.
Yes. In that para, you have stated that you have been provided with significant amount of documentation, correct?
Correct.
Who gave you those documents?
That would be Winshear's counsel is what I have been provided with. I also performed some research myself, but that is not what I'm referring to here, being provided. But additional documentation would have been from my own research.
Thank you. Were you given in lump sum or installments?
Not everything at once. I would have had a number of installments. I started working in about February, I recall, 2021. So I would have had some documents over that time. But as I say here, I have listed all the documents that I have relied upon in my report, and I exhibit those that weren't previously disclosed as at the date of my first report.
Okay. Were you given also quarterly reports by BAFEXI, which is the holder of the license in question before this tribunal?
Sorry, was I given BAFEX Tanzania Limited's audited financial statements? Is that the question?
But you are not given quarterly reports for BAFEX, right?
So I have seen them subsequently. I don't recall at what point I was given them, whether it would have been at the date of this report or at the date of the second report.
Okay, thank you. Did you use those quarterly reports by BAFEX in calculation of the quantum?
Are we talking about their financial statements?
I'm talking about quarterly reports.
I think you mean the quarterly reports, exploration reports that were filed or
Yes.
with the ministry.
Yeah.
Apologies. So the mining reports and not
Yes.
the financial statements. I was given some of them at this time, and then I noted subsequently there were more, and I did see some of them, and I looked at some of them at the time of preparing this report. But I chose to use Winshear's consolidated audited financial statements. I'm happy to explain why.
Okay, thank you. I take you to Exhibit C7. C7. Are you there?
I can see it on the screen. I don't have. Oh, do I have a hard copy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Apologies. 1 second.
You can also use the
Just
screen.
the front page. C7. In this, it is there also on the screen.
Sorry, I can see my reports. Well, I can see it on the screen.
Yeah.
If it is important, I'm happy to.
I think you can look at it on the screen
Yeah,
if
sure.
you need to otherwise look at the context, or so you can always go to the hard copies.
I can see it on the screen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you agree that the holder of retention license was BAFEX Tanzania Limited? Do you agree that?
I understand that that is the case.
But you didn't want to use financial statements by BAFEX Tanzania Limited. Is that not the case?
That is not the case because I used the Winshear consolidated financial statements that includes all of the results of BAFEX Tanzania Limited's, BTL's, audited financial statements would be included within Winshear's. So by using Winshear's consolidated financial statements, I am using the results of BTL's audited financial statements.
Okay, thank you. I take you to para 2.3.2 of your first report. Are you there?
I am there.
Yes, in that paragraph, you have stated that Winshear began exploration activities on the SMP Gold project in 2006, and that from 2006 onwards, it performed the substantial exploration works. Correct?
I have written that here in my background section. I've stated at the top of my background section that this doesn't actually form part of my opinion. It's on matters outside of my opinion, but is included to explain the factual context for my work, and it's based on documents that I have examined and explanations that were given to me. So that statement, those two statements on when it began exploration activities and what it identified, I put footnotes to the reference, and at the bottom of the page, it explains that that is from the 2012 PEA.
So that is wrong. Which one is correct? The one you have written or the one you are telling before this tribunal?
I'm sorry, I'm not aware of a difference.
Pardon?
I don't understand the question.
You have stated that Winshear began exploration in 2006 onwards. Is that correct?
That is what I understand from the PEA, yes.
Okay. Do you understand that in SMP Gold project also includes prospecting license? Do you know that?
I do.
And do you know that the conflict before this tribunal is only for retention license? Do you agree that?
I was instructed to value the Winshear's investment in the S&P Gold project. And that is what I have done.
Okay, sir. Thank you. I take you to Exhibit C007. C007. Have you seen it?
I can see it on the screen again.
Do you agree with me that that is the one of the prospecting license that was given to Bafex Tanzania Limited?
It's a retention license.
Okay. Sorry, Madam President.
Maybe you meant to show another one.
Yes, that's one of the retention license. I agree. So, do you agree that Winshear was not granted retention license?
Yes, I've heard during this hearing that, and I can see on the screen that it was Winshear's wholly owned subsidiary, Bafex Tanzania Limited, that was granted the license.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I end here, then my colleague, Counsel Lydia Thomas, will proceed. Thank you.
Fine.
Hi, Vic. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I just have a few questions, Vicky. Starting from paragraph. Okay. Okay. Yes, Vic, I have some questions for you today. Starting from paragraph 2.3.2, 2.3 of your phase T report. Are you
Thank you.
there?
Thank you, I
Yes.
am there.
You have stated that the project advanced to the stage of applying for special mining license, correct?
Again, this is in my background section on which I don't provide an opinion, but have used wording that I have found in documents that I link to.
Do you understand my question, Vicky?
No, please.
I
repeat.
have asked you, you stated, I just want you to confirm, only to confirm what you have stated. You say that the project was advanced to the stage of applying for special mine license. Is it correct?
I have written at 2.3.3.
Yes.
That we're saying by mid-2017, Winshear had developed the SMP Gold project significantly and was preparing to apply for special mining license over the SMP area. I agree, that is what is written, and I have taken that from paragraph 18 of the request for arbitration.
Okay. Then I refer you to section. Do you know the requirements for application of special mining license?
No, I don't. As I said, I wasn't providing an opinion on this. I was including it for factual context and
Okay.
have clearly stated the references that I used for this.
Did the claimant have feasibility study at the time the retention license in dispute were cancelled?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question? Did the claimant?
Did the claimant have feasibility study at the time the retention licenses in dispute were cancelled?
It's not within my expertise, but I understand there was no feasibility study in place.
Thank you. And in the same paragraph, I mean 2.3.3 of your first statement, or first report, you stated that Winshear held 4 retention licenses and 9 prospecting licenses in SMP project, correct?
Again, I wrote this, but I wrote it in my background section, and I do not opine on this statement.
Sorry?
I wrote this in my report, and I agree that I wrote this, but I wrote this in my background section, and I stated that I don't opine on it, and I have given the references for where I have got this information from.
Okay. And now, I just refer you to Exhibit VW 2.3. VW 2.3. Are you there? You can check it on the screen, please.
I can see it on the screen, and I recall this.
Yeah.
This is one of...
And those are retention licenses, 4 retention license, correct?
This was an exhibit given to me,
Yes.
and I agree. It is a list, which is why I included it in my report, and
Thank
there are 4 retention licenses as a Gapgohari Nilungi.
Thank you, Vicky. Okay, in paras 2.4.1 up to 2.4.2 of your first statement, you stated that the mining laws, are you there?
I am there, thank you.
You stated that the mining laws in 2017 and 2018, as well as a public tender in 2019, rendered Winshear's investment in Tanzania valueless and entirely lost its investment in the SMP Gold project, correct?
No, I wrote it was the claimant's case. is that these actions rendered Winshear's investment in Tanzania valueless, and it entirely lost its investment in the S&P Gold project, and I referred to paragraph 25 of the request for arbitration. This is again in my background section, and I don't provide an opinion on it.
Is it correct that you wrote that?
Yes, it is correct that I
Yep.
wrote that.
Thank you. Now, coming to VW 2.3, the one we saw previously. Are you there?
Yes.
Did the cancellation include any of the 9 prospecting licenses?
This is not within my expertise, but having sat in the hearing, I understand that the cancellation was of the 4 retention licenses. But as I said, I was asked to value the SMP Gold project, and as we just read out, it was the claimant's case that the loss of the retention licenses meant that it lost its entire investment in the SMP Gold project.
Now, I don't understand your answer. Is it the cancellation include any of the 9 prospecting licenses, Vic? Is it yes or no?
I said this is not within my expertise, but I understand from what you are saying that having sat in the hearing, that is the case. It does not include the
Thank
9
you.
prospecting
Thank you.
licenses.
I refer you again in paras 3.31. Are you there?
I am there, thank you.
Which you stated you have used the Winshear financial statements in your calculation, correct?
I don't state this here, but I explained in my presentation and elsewhere in my report that I rely on Winshear's consolidated audited financial statements.
So the answer is yes or no?
Well, no, I didn't state it here, but yes, I did use Winshear's consolidated audited
Thank you.
financial statement. It's just not in paragraph 331.
And you previously agreed that the retention license were granted to Buffett Tanzania Limited, correct?
Yes, I agree that, but I
Thank-
explained that the Winshear's consolidated audited financial statements include BTL's audited financial statements because it's a wholly consolidated subsidiary, wholly owned subsidiary.
Okay. Does the authenticity of record matter in quantification of loss of business?
Yes,
Thank you. And does the authenticity of historical costs matter in calculation of total expenditure for the company? Correct?
yes.
Does it matter? Thank you. Did you consider that in this case, when you was calculating the historical costs for the claimant, did you consider that?
Yes.
Thank you. I take you to paragraph 5.6.1. Up to 5.6.4.
Yes,
Of your face report. You see that?
I do. Thank you.
You used the Winshear audited financial statement as the basis for your calculation because they were signed by two directors and the auditor, correct?
No, those are 2 separate statements. I agree that I used Winshear's consolidated audited financial statements, and I agree that those financial statements would have been signed by the director and the auditor, but that's not the primary reason why I used them. I used them because I thought they were the most appropriate source of information.
And how can you prove that?
how can I prove that they're the most appropriate sorts
Yes.
of information? They are signed by the auditor, and so they have been tested and verified. They will have consolidated, so they will include not only Winshear or Helio's costs, they will also include the costs of its wholly owned subsidiary, and they will be filed on CEDA. They will be publicly available on Winshear's website. So I consider them to be authentic, appropriate costs.
Okay.
So is that your question?
And so you say that we are signed by the auditors, correct?
The audited accounts will be signed by the auditors, yes. They may be signed electronically, or they may be signed in pen. It depends on the circumstances. But they will each include an auditor's statement of opinion.
Okay, so what do you mean? Signed electronical? It
What-
means that the electronical one and the hard one signature are the same, or what are you trying to say, Vic?
So my name is Miss Vicky Wall. I am saying at 5.6.3 that the audited financial statements were signed by the two directors, and they also include, they were audited financial statements, so they will include a statement of audited opinion from the auditors. So I'm only saying that they are signed by the directors. I imagine that an audit opinion will be signed by the auditors, but I didn't write that here. I think it's important that it has an audited, a statement of audit opinion in order to be an audited financial statement.
Okay, so the reason why you used this a Winshear financial statement and which you believe that are appropriate is because they were signed by two directors and auditor.
No,
Is that
no, I didn't say that. You said that. I said it's that they are signed by two directors and they will have been audited. And I think the fact that they were audited is important. But I use them because they will include both the costs of BTL and the additional costs of Winshear or Helio. So I thought they were the most appropriate source because they contained both BTL and Winshear. So the fact that they were audited was also important, but I thought they were the appropriate source because they were the one source that contained all that information.
okay? And you say that was audited by the auditor and was signed by auditor, correct?
No, I said it was signed by two directors at 5.6.3, and they will include a statement of audited opinion in order to be called audited financial statements.
Can I take you to page 3 of the VW 5.59? Page 3. Are you there?
I can see it on the screen. I can't see it in the sheet.
Yes. Can you see the last paragraph? The
Not
one
yet.
with signature?
I can. So can you go to the very top? Which audited financial statements are these? Oh, this is not my. Oh, this is just page 3 of my appendix. Okay. This is the second, at least the second page, maybe the third page of the audit opinion of a financial statements.
How do you prove that that document is authentic? How do you prove that?
Well, it would be helpful to have the full financial statements
Can
because
you
page
show
3.
the full financial
Sure.
statement, because it will be easier to answer?
Sure.
Unless it's in here, in which case that's fine.
Is it in the binder?
Have you seen that, Vic?
Sorry, I can't see it now.
From the screen.
Ah, thank you.
Yeah. Do you see that?
I can, thank you.
Yes. Can you go to page number 3, please? Will be page number 4.
Thank you, I can see.
Nice. Page 4. Do you see that page from the screen, please?
I do, thank you.
Yeah. Then how can you prove the authenticity of that document?
Well, this is, if this is my exhibit, I took it from Winshear's, either Winshear's website or the CEDA website. It's publicly available information that I downloaded. So I considered it to be publicly available and has a 3-page statement of audit opinion on a company listed on the Toronto Stock Exchange and subject to the requirements and guidelines that it would need to be on that. So yes, I would consider these financial statements to be authentic.
Okay. In paragraph 3.34, up to 3.35,
Yes, I see.
you see that?
I do, thank you.
Like you say that you separated the SMP project exploration cost from other Winshear geographical location, correct?
I say I include all exploration costs from 1st of January 2006 to the valuation date, which have been identified as having been occurred in Tanzania, and I am instructed that all costs, and have no reason to believe otherwise, that all costs incurred in Tanzania relate to the SMP Gold project, and that these were disclosed in the notes to the audited financial statements.
Very well. Can you please try to answer my question? I have asked in 3.34, you said, especially at the last sentence, you say that I exclude exploration costs incurred in all other regions. Is it correct?
I agree. I wrote I exclude exploration costs incurred in all other regions.
Thank you. And then you previously agreed that SMP Gold project has 4 retention licenses and 9 prospecting licenses, correct?
I agreed. I had written that in my background section and believe that to be true. Yes.
And you know the nature of this dispute, correct?
Yes.
You know. It is for the 4 retention licenses which were cancelled, correct?
I was instructed to quantify Winshear's investment in the S&P Gold project, which I am instructed covers all its investment, all its expenditure in the S&P Gold project. Both retention licenses and prospecting licenses have been lost its value.
Okay. I refer you to table 5.3 of your first report. You see that?
I can, thank you.
You have indicated the summary of the cost, which you took from your exhibit VWD,
That is correct.
correct? And I refer you to exhibit VWD at sheet D7.
You need to push the right arrow. You're just adding sheets. Sorry, I'll keep going to the left, and there's the right arrow there. Keep pushing the right arrow. No. Keep going across to the left. You have to push the right side arrow. Okay, well, that works.
You have calculated the quartile exploration cost for the relevant period January 2006 up to December 2019, correct?
Yes.
If you go to row number 10 of the said exhibit, row number 10, do you see that?
Yes.
You will agree with me that you have included costs incurred in areas under 9 prospecting licenses in your calculation, correct?
It is likely that some of these costs also include exploration costs in relation to the prospecting licenses, because they would all be part of the S&P Gold project. They, for the most part, weren't separated out in the financial statements.
Thank you. And you agree with me that the area in prospecting licenses are outside the retention licenses, which are not part of this dispute?
I do not agree, because I have been asked to quantify the investment in the S&P Gold project.
Vicky, can you answer my questions? Are those 9 prospecting licenses within the retention licenses area?
I am a quantum expert, so I think opining on things that I've heard while sitting here isn't helpful. I have been asked to quantify the investment in the S&P Gold project, of which these prospecting licenses are part of.
And so, so you mean that you do not know that the nature of this dispute, as well as you do not know the retention licenses area? Is that what you mean?
I'm not a geologist. I have been sitting and I have heard, and I can reproduce what I have heard sitting here, but I'm saying as an independent expert, in order to quantify the loss, I have been asked to quantify the loss of the S&P Gold project, which includes both the retention licenses and the cost of the prospecting licenses.
Thank you, Vicky. Did you consider record of Buffett Tanzania in your calculations?
If you're talking about the audited financial statements of BTL, then yes, in 2 ways. Firstly, it's BTL's consolidated financial statements. BTL's financial statements are included within Winshear's consolidated financial statements. The auditors of Winshear must check that they agree with the audit of BTL in order to consolidate it. For a lot of the time, for instance, I think between about 2007 and 2012, it was PwC who audited both BTL and Winshear. And so the auditors would check, and even if they are separate auditors, it is Winshear's auditors' jobs to check upon consolidation that they agree with the subsidiary companies that are included. Separately, in my second report, I also described that I looked at it for 2015, a sample year, I looked at the consolidation schedule and checked the accounts not only to the financial statements, but also to the accounting ledgers and the kind of the general ledger, the company accounting ledger, and its trial balance, its schedule used for consolidation. And I also checked that to some of the underlying invoices.
And so do you, you say that the consolidated Winshear financial statements came from BTL. Is that what you mean, Vic, to make things clear? Just say
Sorry.
yes or
can you
no.
repeat, sorry, can you repeat it again, please?
What is the source of the consolidated financial statements? What is the source? Did you take it from the BTL or you take from somewhere else?
So I used the Winshear's consolidated financial statements, apart from my sample testing, but that will include Winshear's own financial statements, BTL's, Buffex Holdings, and Buffex Exploration. It's the consolidation of those 4 companies within the consolidated financial statements. But aside from the 1 year, sorry, I don't know if it's a yes or a no, but I used Winshear's consolidated financial statements as my source.
Thank you, Vic. And so, if someone take the financial statement from BTL, the exploration cost will be the same to that the consolidated Winshear financial statements.
I don't know because I haven't had that exercise. I haven't repeated that exercise for any year apart from 2015. But all of BTL's costs must be included within the consolidated Winshear accounts. There are some exceptions upon a consolidation where you will remove intracompany transactions. I'm not aware of any in this case, but so I don't think there should be any differences. You may wish to reclassify or recategorize something into an exploration cost or out of an exploration costs, so there may be minor differences. But I would expect that, and I found it in 2015, that the BTL accounts would be, for exploration, would be included as the exploration costs in Winshear, although it's obviously at a different exchange rate, because, a different currency, because Winshear reports its functional currency as Canadian dollars, but BTL, its functional currency is Tanzanian shillings.
Thank you. Then in paragraph 6.2.10 of your phase 2 report, paragraph 6.2.10, of your report.
Yes,
Are you there?
I am, thank you.
You said you calculated total interest of Canadian dollar 69.63 million as return on cost, correct?
Sorry, I didn't hear the number, but assuming you, oh, there, thank you.
I have just
69.
rounded it up.
Thank you.
Yeah.
As at the date of my first report, 2nd of July 2021, that was the figure, although I updated the interest to the date of my second report in my second report.
I'm
So
just asking of the phase 2 report.
for the first report,
Yeah.
so that applies interest up to the date
Is it correct or
of
not?
my first report. It is correct up to
It's
the date of my
yeah,
first
yeah.
report.
Then is it correct to say that the amount of Canadian dollar 69.63 million is 150% of your calculated total historical cost, correct?
Sorry, I'm not doing that in my head. So you've taken 69 divided by 46.
Yes.
70 over 45. Doesn't sound quite like 150%, but whatever 69 divided by 46 is, or thereabouts. Because 46 doubled would be more like 90. So it doesn't sound exactly right there.
But at least it is near that.
It's more than 100%, definitely.
Thank you. And then you have arrived at that figure by applying a 10% compounded interest rate as a return on cost, correct?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that the project was at its early development stage?
I've heard it being described as an advanced exploration stage, but it was, compared to an entire project, it was an early stage mining project.
Vicky, if I ask the yes/no questions, I just need the yes/no answers.
But this, I'm sorry, this is a question that an evaluation expert cannot answer because it's not in her expertise. That would be a geologist question.
Okay, maybe I refer her to the first report at paragraph 4.3.10. 4.3.10 of our report. Can you read that, Miss Vicky?
Yes.
Sorry, Vic Wall.
It's not Vic, it's Vicky, but yes. Because the project is at an early developmental stage.
There. So you said because the project is at the early development stage. And then my question was, would you agree with me that the project was in its early development stage at the time the retention licenses were cancelled? Answer is no or yes.
Actually, my answer is it's not within my expertise as a quantum accountant, evaluator to answer that question.
And so
I will agree, it's at an early developmental stage, it's an early stage project, and I have been listening and hearing, and it's an advanced exploration stage.
So Vic, are you disowning your own information from that paragraph?
No, I agree in the context, there's no
So you agree that the project was at the early development stage as you stated in paragraph 4.3.10 of your first statement?
I agree. What I can't
Thank you.
opine on is whether...
Thank you.
Can I just so that we're clear, I understood this when I read this as a valuation expert assessment of development of a project in the sense that is not a project that is in production, in operation, and has already is generating cash flows, and therefore you cannot apply DCF income method. However, I also understand, and of course you can later comment on this, that this is not an assessment in terms of mining development.
Exactly.
Do you understand the difference? What Mrs. Wall is doing is an assessment as a valuation expert, not as a mining expert.
Okay. Then I refer you to paragraph 4.3.1. At page 31. Sorry. Paragraph 4.3.1 of your first witness statement. First report, sorry.
Yes.
Yes, you mentioned of the VW 4.1, the exhibit VW 4.1. Correct.
Yes, this is IBS.
Okay.
I don't know, sorry, is this,
Then
can you just remind me if this is
from
IBS?
footnote number 20.
2020 or is it 2017? If you could just go to the first page of the IVS. No, it is IVS. I just
Yeah.
didn't know because I exhibited two. I exhibited 17 and 2020. They are similar. I just
So
didn't
you
know which one.
referred VW 4.1, correct?
Yes.
Can we just go to the first page and then we have the heading?
Okay.
And
Yes, that's all I
it's
wanted.
clear which version of the IVS it is.
Yes. So I can go to my list of exhibits.
Are you there?
If you can go down a page to the year, that would be very helpful. 2020. Thank you.
You see it?
Yes.
Okay, I refer you to section 20.2 of that document.
I can see.
You see that?
I can.
It says that the market approach should be applied and afforded significant weight under the following circumstances. You see those circumstances?
Yes.
Ms. Vickwar, are you aware of the Helio-Shanta arrangement agreement?
Yes.
You're aware? And are you aware of the press release on Helio-Shanta agreement was released by Helio on 19 June 2017, correct?
Sorry, that the Helio was what on 20th of June?
Was released,
Released.
yes, press release.
A press release.
Yes, about that Helio-Shanta agreement.
Yes.
So the press release on Helio-Shanta agreement was released by Shanta Gold on 20 June 2017, correct?
I know it was June 2017. I don't know the exact day. I can look it up, or you can show me the press release if that date is important.
Okay, I will take you to C191.
That's not a press release.
This is the answer to the notice of termination, so it must be an earlier document that you're
And-
looking for.
Have you seen that document?
The termination notice in
Yes.
August. Yes.
And can we go to ARA 30?
Sorry, what am I turning to?
No,
Oh,
they
not
will
to me.
show it to you. R0.
Oh, 030, apologies. This,
You see that document?
I can, this still isn't the June 17 one, but it's a press release.
And that was, if you see the paragraph 2, you see that?
I do.
From Richard Williams. Can you read those words? From Richard Williams.
Richard Williams,
Yes.
Helio's CEO, said, "We strongly disagree with Shanta Gold's assertion that the recent changes to Tanzania's mining laws amount to a material adverse effect as defined in the arrangement agreement, and reject their opportunistic attempt to walk away from their obligations." You want me to continue? "We believe
Yes.
that combining Shanta Gold and Helio continues to make sense for both companies, and are disappointed that our partner in this transaction chose to take this drastic step without any prior discussions.
And now, can we go then back to 191? Sorry, it's 178. 178. As a subject matter, that Helio interest into arrangement agreement with Shanta Gold, June 19, 2017. You see that?
I can, yes.
Yeah, and it is a document from the claimant's side.
Yes.
And so, back to my previous questions, this agreement entered in June 19, 2017, correct?
The arrangement,
From the document, please, at the subject matter.
I'm just looking for the date. I agree it says Helio enters into an arrangement agreement, and that document is dated 19th of June 2017. They've entered into it as of 20 June, yes. They entered into a definitive arrangement agreement dated 19th of June 2017.
Correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Would you agree with me that Helio's press release of 6 September 2017 reconfirmed the validity of that agreement?
I think that is really.
Can we see, we see it from exhibit? Yes.
It is. I think it's a legal question. What the document, the other press release that you showed, shows is that Helio did oppose the termination, saying it is not a material adverse effect.
Yes.
Is that what you have in mind?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I agree that second press release showed that Mr. Williams of Helio didn't consider it to be a material adverse effect and wanted the agreement to continue.
Thank you. Then in your statement, you have indicated that you have applied cost approach in determining a base for calculation of fair market value at paragraph 3.34.
I have. Did you want to go back to the market approach? Because I can explain why I do not agree with those highlighted ones that I didn't agree. That Helio was.
Madam President, I think it's just a request that we have taken so much time. So maybe at this juncture, because we still have questions, if we can take a healthy break and then come to continue where we have ended, we really appreciate that. We have been sitting for a long time. We still have more questions.
Yes, I can see that.
Yes.
You want a break now?
Yes, please.
Yeah, we can take a break and then you can go through your questions,
Yes.
and we can ask our questions afterwards. That's fine. And Mrs. Waller, you have been with us before, so you know that you should not speak to anyone during the break. Let's take 15 minutes. Is that fine? Yeah, until 3:15.
Madam President, we are ready on our side.
Yes, good. Excellent.
Yes, Madam Madam Wall. I don't know if it's fine to call Madam Wall.
It is. Mrs. Wall, it's absolutely fine.
Thank you. I just refer you to paragraph 4.3.21 of your first paragraph. A first report. Paragraph 4.3.21.
I have it,
Yes.
yes.
You have referred the document called Applying the Cost Approach to Valuation of Exploration Stage Mineral Assets, correct? Which is Exhibit VW 4.5. Is that correct?
Yes.
Was this document relevant in your calculation?
I used it as a cross-check in my description of the MEE.
Was it correct? Was it relevant or not?
Yes, I use it as a cross-check.
Thank you. Under subheading relevance, oh, that's document 4, yes. Subheading relevance. Page 3, you see that? Relevance.
Yes.
It is indicated that for expenditure to be relevant, it must be direct, applicable, and specific to the mineral asset as well as the commodity, correct?
Yes.
Would you agree that the valuer has to apply an expiry limited on historical costs?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
You will agree with me that the valuer has to apply an expiry limit of historical expenditure.
I'm sorry, I'm still missing an expiring limit.
You will agree
Sorry,
from that
second part.
relevance.
Yes.
You see that?
I can see relevance for expenditure directly applicable and specific to the mineral asset. Sorry, I'm
You see
missing
that?
your question.
Yes. Then my question is, you will agree with me that the valuer
Yes.
has to apply an expiry limited on historical expenditure.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand the words.
Historical costs, yes.
Expiry limited
Yes.
on historical expenditure.
Can you explain? what
I mean that the valuer, when evaluating the historical cost, has to consider only the exploration expenditure which are mostly recent.
So 2 points here.
Yes.
Firstly, this was my cross-check. I did it under, my primary was IVS, so my description here is IVS. But I'm very happy to look at the calculation under the MEE method 2. It says some practitioners apply an expiry limit on historic expenditure. I see that now. But like 2 points higher up, it says reasonable administrative costs directly applicable to the asset may be included. Or are you just talking about the time limit?
I think your question was about time, was it not?
Was it just
Yes,
timed? Yeah.
sure.
No, I don't agree, because at the end of the sentence says, while others will include older exploration if it is deemed to have material effect on the perceived prospectivity of the asset. So I considered that from 2006 onwards was relevant. I didn't go pre-2006. I didn't go to previous exploration, for example. So I didn't include all historic expenditure ever on the asset, for example, I don't know, previous one like Princess Resources, but I included from the start of 2006.
Okay, Vicky, sorry, Madam Wall, maybe we go to page 3 at bullet number 3. Bullet number 3, which says some practitioners apply an expiry limit on historical expenditure. For example, a limit of 5 years is imposed by RESCO here. A limit of 5 years. You saw that?
I can see, but the rest of the sentence says, while others will include older exploration if it is deemed to have a material effect on the perceived prospectivity of the asset. So although this was not my primary approach, this was my cross-check, I would consider in this instance it was relevant to include exploration from the beginning of the SMP project, which was in early 2006. I've included from the first quarter of 2006.
Thank you. And you previously said that that document, I mean VW 4.5, was relevant in your calculation, correct?
I said it was relevant as a cross-check, yes.
But you did not consider that fact. The 5 years limit of the exploration cost.
I do not agree. For this first reason, it was a cross-check. And second, the whole bullet point says some practitioners say, but others include older exploration if it is relevant. And so I consider all of the exploration since 2006 in this case will be relevant. So yes, I read the article, yes, I considered, but no, I didn't consider it was appropriate to apply an expiry limit in this case.
Thank you. I take you to paragraph 5.3.2 of your phase 2 report. Are you there?
Yes.
You have stated that the record you have relied upon in your calculation of exploration costs incurred in Tanzania are 33.6 Canadian dollars. I mean 33.6 million Canadian dollars, which you calculated from Winshear financial statement, correct?
Yes, it's not quite in that table, but I included 33.365, which is in table 5.3, and I did use Winshear's consolidated financial statements.
And you used the historical cost from the year 2006 through 31 March 2020.
No, that's what this table does, but I used a cutoff. So first of all, in my report, I explained what all the information available was, and then on the following page, at table 5.3, is the amount of the exploration costs that I have included from 1st of January 2006 to 31 December 2019. So the figure you see in 5.1 is everything, and then the amount I've included in the claim is a slightly different cutoff that's on the following table.
Sorry, what was your cutoff? You started from 2006?
1st of January to, well, in the first quarter, so anything after, in the 3 months to the 31st of March, so the 1st of January 2006. And my cutoff was 31 December 2019, because I used that as a proxy to 18th of December 2019.
Thank you. And you will agree with me that the majority of the record you have relied upon are more than 5 years old?
Yes.
Thank you. Let us come to the return on cost. In paragraph 4.3.8 of your phase 3 report, are you there?
Yes.
You have referred the Canadian Institute of Mining.
Yes.
That is VW 4.4, correct?
Yes.
I refer you to page 35 of that document.
Page what? I'm sorry.
Page 35, please. 35. Thank you.
Is it in my bundle?
Yes.
It is on the screen
Page
now as well.
five.
Okay. I can see it on the screen. I'm sorry,
You
I can't
see
find
it?
it in the. I can't see
Have
it in
you-
the bundle, but I can see it
No,
on the
you
screen.
can see it from the screen, please.
Yes.
Can you check on the screen, please?
Yes.
Yeah. At that page 35,
Yes.
there is the definition of mineral reserve. Do you see it?
No, not yet. Okay.
It states that mineral reserve means economical manner, part of measured or indicated mineral resource, correct?
Yes.
Did the 2011 pair of 2015 resource estimate include mineral reserves?
I can say my recollection, but I think if you'd like me to comment, could you take me to the PEA and part of it? I'm sorry, I'm not a geologist, and my opinion
Okay, thank
isn't on
you.
the results.
Now I take you to paragraph 6.11. You see it?
Yes, thank you.
You have applied a compounded interest of 10% as a return on cost to be added to your calculated cost base, correct?
I have applied a range of returns, of which one is the 10%. I've also applied Canadian Prime plus 2%, Tanzanian bonds, and 8% and 12%.
Correct. Is
Aye.
correct or not?
I have applied all those rates at a compound rate to the historic costs to provide a range for the tribunal.
Thank you. Then in paragraph 7.11 of your first report,
Sorry, 7.11.
paragraph
7.1.
Yep.
Yep.
Yes,
Yes.
you quoted Article 10, sub 3 of the BIT. You see that?
I do. Yes.
And it is stated that it shall include interest at a commercially reasonable rate for that current from the date of expiration until dates of payment, correct?
Yes.
Does that article provide for compound interest?
Well, you can show it to me.
Yes.
My recollection, well, please show it to me. My recollection is that that's what the quote says. It doesn't say compound or simple. What it states is at a commercially reasonable rate.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go on, sorry.
And the commercially reasonable rate has an associated interest basis alongside. Canadian Prime plus 2, or LIBOR in the olden days, must be compounded. It's never in practice applied on a simple basis. There are interest rates I've had certain statutory cases for tax which is applied on a simple basis that is stated as such and is typically at a much higher rate than something of Canadian Prime plus 2. So I think my reading of this as an accountant at a commercially reasonable rate means that alongside the rate, you need to give the basis of compounding. The basis of compounding is simple, and for me, Canadian Prime plus 2 must be compounded.
And so, you will agree with me that Article 10, Sub 3, the one which you referred, does not provide for compound interest.
I agree, it doesn't say whether it should be compound or simple, but it does say commercially reasonable rate. And to me, I read that to be the rate and the basis alongside it.
And so, will you agree with me that the compound interest which you applied in your calculation has no basis as far as Article 10, Sub 3, the one which you referred?
No, I won't agree with you because to me, I agree that it doesn't explicitly say whether it should be compound or simple. But for me, when I read it as an accountant, a commercially reasonable rate needs to also be applied at an appropriate basis, which is commercially reasonable and economically rational.
And so do you have authority for that, or is only from your head? Do you have authority or any book or like maybe like that you referred in 4.5? Do you have any authority of your words?
Sorry, in paragraph 4.5. Sorry, were you referring me to paragraph?
No, the question was whether you have authority
Oh, okay.
to state
An exhibit.
that the commercially, an exhibit, yeah,
Apologies.
reasonable rate implies compound interest, as you said before.
I think somewhere I included the GAR guide for damages that covers interest. I have seen that read, because I definitely read it in the preparation for this, and that discusses compounding and simple and explains that that a prime rate is generally compounded and that simple would be, although occasionally awarded by tribunals, would be at a higher rate and is very rarely seen. But obviously this is a legal matter. I put my suggestion forward as a qualified accountant and leave it to the discretion of the tribunal and can obviously calculate anything at either simple or compound or at a different rate, should that be helpful.
Sorry, Madam Wall, I just want to make something clear here. So you mean that you do not have any authority on that compound interest? You have not submitted any authority to that?
I can see if I can find, I definitely read somewhere about the GAR guide to damages interest
Thank
section.
you. Okay, then I refer you to paragraph 3.4.4 of your first report.
I have it here.
And so, Madam Wall, from that paragraph, if you are engaged as an investment advisor by a company or by any company that has been offered to buy SMP project today, would you advise your client to buy the project for that amount you have come about?
I'm trying to answer your question. It's not a yes or a no answer to that. If under different conditions, under my instruction, to the fair market value of the SMP project, but for the alleged actions, yes, I would believe this to be a reasonable rate. The number actually is now 116.1 million, not 116.2, because I have corrected it. Yes, but this is not the same as the value today. This is my value in the but-for world, which is my instruction, but for the actions of Tanzania, alleged actions here.
Okay. Have you read Richard Williams' witness statement? Have you read?
I have read both of them, yes.
Yes. I would like to take you to paragraph 48. The first witness, yes. Paragraph 48 of Williams. Have you seen that?
Yes. I can see it now, and I have seen it before, yes.
Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Is IFC still a shareholder of the claimants or one of the shareholders?
I understood from the evidence of Mr. Williams yesterday, although I wasn't aware of it until then, that the IFC was no longer a shareholder. It exited at a far lower price at the start of Tanzania's actions.
Was that lower? Sorry, I didn't understand.
If you were asking whether IFC is still a shareholder, I was saying I heard yesterday from Mr. Williams that no, it had exited. Apologies, I can't quite remember that the year, I think 2016 or 2017, because at a far lower price than it had here.
And what about its shares?
It sold them.
It was sold. And how much was it sold?
I'm afraid you'd need to take me to the transcript. I can't quite recall. I think it was I think Mr. Williams said it was about the same as the Shanta transaction price, a fraction of the price as a result of the Tanzania actions.
I don't think this is something that Ms. Wall covered, but we heard Mr. Williams saying yesterday, and I remember 6 or 7 cents per share.
Thank you.
And Council will correct me afterwards if my memory is wrong.
Thank you so much, Madam President and members of the tribunal. I have no further questions, and I would like to welcome our senior counsel, Mr. George Mandepo, to take the floor.
Thank you. Mr. Mandepo?
Thank you, Madam Wall. I prefer to call you Wall, right?
You can call me Vicky or Mrs.
So
Wall,
that I should
whichever
not
you prefer, or
offend
Ms.
you.
Wall.
Yes. Okay, just to make the correction from your own statement. My colleague have asked you several questions regarding the investment in relation to Perfect Tanzania Limited. In your calculation, please tell the tribunal, do you involve figures from Perfect Tanzania Limited?
Insofar as they're included within Winshear's consolidated financial statements, I will. Well, I would assume that they would be entirely included. So yes, I include Bafex Tanzania Limited's results because they would have been included in Winshear's consolidated financial statements.
And in your first report, and I'm just referring to paragraph 1.42, you summarized document you relied upon. Say them?
I don't say, well, I summarize here what I have been provided with.
Yes.
And I list the documents I relied upon in
Yes.
Appendix B.
And B, we said that Winshear's audited financial statement and the interim quarterly reports. See
Agreed.
that?
Yes, agreed. I was provided with them and I used them.
And D, you said Winshear's prospecting and retention licenses.
I said I was
You
provided
said-
with them. I didn't say I relied upon them.
You were provided with the Winshear prospecting licenses.
I don't recall actually reading them. I know I had the list that I exhibited in my exhibit that you took me to earlier, so I think it's exhibit 3.2. I don't recall particularly reading the licenses themselves.
Were you provided with the Winshear retention licenses?
I don't recollect. I said that they were here. I don't recollect reading them.
You wrote here. This is not your statement.
I assume then I was provided with them. I don't recollect reading them. I'm not a...
For example, I say that Winshear had no retention license, no prospecting license. Will you agree with me?
In my background section, in section 2, I explained that that didn't form part of my opinion, and I included it for background purposes, and I included all the references either to the PEA or the request for arbitration.
These were not part of your calculation, right? The information you provided in your background, because you are keeping saying these are not part of my calculations.
Agreed. I included the quantification of the S&P Gold project.
And you are an expert witness in this tribunal. Do you know the consequences of the expert saying what is not exactly in the facts?
I think I'm slightly insulted. I am exactly explaining what I have been instructed to do, and my instruction was to quantify the SMP Gold project.
Who instructed you? You were keeping saying, I've been instructed, I've been instructed.
I explained at the very start of my evidence that my instruction was from Winshear. I also took instructions on a day-to-day basis from Winshear's council. But my engagement letter was from Winshear.
You were engaged by Winshear.
I was, yes.
Okay, so you have a letter for providing witness statement on behalf of Winshear, right?
No, I have a engagement letter with Winshear. Sorry, is that what you said? Winshear, yes.
Okay. And let me take you to witness statement by Mr. Mackenzie. It's among the documents you are referring, the basis of your calculations. Paragraph 50, first witness statement. See that paragraph?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Mackenzie here is saying that IRIO commenced exploration work at the project area in 2006 after acquiring the SAZA PL from TTML. See those words?
Yes, I can see that.
If you go back to paragraph 36, Mr. Mackenzie also saying that here that IRIO met these requirements, eventually completed 100% of acquisition of SAZA PL in November 2009. See those words?
Yes, I can see that.
Yes. I take you to paragraph 43. And again, Mr. Mackenzie, it says that that remained the case until IRIO converted those prospecting licenses into retention license in 2013. You see those words?
Yes.
So, according to Mr. Mackenzie, I think you heard his testimony here yesterday,
Yes.
that in 2006, it was the time when Bafex Tanzania Limited obtained the project and they started to do exploration. You heard it?
The timing was definitely in 2006. Whether it was Helio or Bafex Tanzania Limited, as it said here, I cannot comment. But the timing started in early 2006, and I included my costs starting from 2006.
You included them in your cost calculation, right?
From 2006.
2006, area 2006.
Sorry, so the first.
2006.
Yes.
Let me take you to your own calculation.
Sure.
This is appendix D7. Yes, you see it?
I do.
And you see on quarter 3, see there?
Yes.
It is referred to 2006. You see it? I just answer yes or no.
I can definitely
Yes.
see it, yes.
And you are referring to a figure which is, I think should be 2.6 million, right?
No. It's 2,616 Canadian dollars.
Yes. Okay. And correlates to Annex
No,
VW 5.2, right?
it does.
Let us see what is in VW.52, another appendices.
Yeah. This number isn't included in my exploration costs. Do you remember your colleague earlier took me to two different tables? One had all the exploration costs that I could find, and then I said I picked the amount that I thought was appropriate for the period. So that is the appendix, which includes everything, but the amount that's included within my exploration costs of 33.365 does not include that figure. That is the wider figure that adds up to 33,417,756, which was the previous table. So I agree with you.
I just asked you if you saw the
Okay.
document.
Yes.
I don't want some explanation from there. But
Okay.
yes,
I
I'll
can
ask you
see
for
it is
some. I'll be
definitely
coming there.
Okay, it's the
Yes.
quarter 31st December 2005.
This is one of your documents you relied upon. See that one?
Yes,
See, Aerial Resource
yes.
Corporation. The audited, this is an interim consolidated.
It's not audited.
Yes.
This is interim.
And there is this word saying, these financial statements have not been reviewed by the company's auditor.
I agree.
What does that mean in your field?
So is that your question, that they haven't been reviewed by the company's auditor? I wouldn't describe this as an audited financial statement. This is an interim financial statement.
Yes, I asked you, what do those words mean to you, that these financial statements have not been reviewed by the company's auditor?
That they haven't been reviewed by the company's auditor, that they are prepared by management and haven't been reviewed. They are not audited
They are
financial
not
statements.
audited. Okay.
Agreed. It's the year-end ones, the year to 31st of March, that
But
are audited.
later were audited.
The year-end ones were audited.
They are audited.
The interim ones, the other 3 quarters, were not. If it's helpful to explain, I relied upon the interim ones, as I said in my presentation, to, not this one, but the later ones, to assign them for the appropriate period of the year. But my figures are all taken from the audited financial statements. I was trying to get it precise to a compound quarterly, to assign it to the appropriate quarter.
Yes, let us go to page 4 of the same document.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, this is page 5, 15. Page 5 of 15. Yes, page 5 of 15, it refers to Tanzania expenditures. You see those words?
Sorry, which words? Tanzania expenditure 2616.
Yes.
Yes.
Was it referring to any project in Tanzania?
I don't know.
I don't know. Is it
I,
written there?
no, I was instructed that any exploration or any expenditure in Tanzania within the exploration costs related to the SMP Gold Project. However, I didn't include this amount within my claim.
I haven't asked you if you included it or not included. I just asked you, is it referring to any project in Tanzania?
On the face of it, no.
No. Thank you. I take you to another document. And this is VW 5.3. And this is expressed in Canadian funds and relates to aerial resources. And there is a covering letter on it, right? You see it?
The auditor's report, yes.
Auditors.
It's the statement of audit opinion.
These are auditors of IRIO.
Yes,
You see, it's dated 5th July 2006.
yes.
Who signed it?
I can see in quotation marks, it's written Staley, Okada and Partners, and that's sometimes how it's filed. It's equivalent to a signature.
I just
it's
asked
in
you,
that.
who
So,
signed it?
Staley, Okada and Partners.
Is there any signature?
It is written in quotation marks, and that is the equivalent to a signature that is sometimes included in financial statements. It's not a legal document in that sense. When they're uploaded to the CEDA, the Toronto Stock Exchange, it's acceptable to have it in this format.
That is the signature to you.
It's a signature for me as far as audited accounts and auditor's opinion is concerned, which is sometimes included and seen as such. Not always, but sometimes.
Okay. And in your statement also, second witness report, second report, paragraph 1.3.1, you are referring to dispute. And you said that, in summary, the case concerned Winshear investment in SMP Gold project. And you said that during 2017 and 18, Tanzania introduced extensive amendments. Was that instructed to you?
I was summarising my section 2 of my previous report, and these are my words, my summary of what I had understood and we had previously discussed in section 2.
So there was extensive amendments of law.
I have explained here the background to the dispute was set out in section 2. That's my wording that I used to summarise what I had previously used in section 2.
In paragraph 1.3.4, you said that I was instructed to qualify the loss by Winshear. And then you are saying also I was instructed to qualify loss with reference to fair market value. Was it your own opinion or was it from your lawyers?
The opinion of the lawyers was instructed to quantify the loss of the Winshear's investment in the S&P Gold project. I have looked at the terms in the wording of the bilateral investment treaty dispute, which may have been given to me by Winshear's lawyers, which referred to the fair market value. By this point in my second report, I had seen that Mr. Mangakala had done the same thing and was also valuing the fair market value of the S&P Gold project, albeit at a different valuation date. I can't quite recall if the fair market value was an instruction as well. I know I definitely looked at the wording in the investment treaty and looked at Mr. Mangakala's report as well.
Yes, same in 1.3.6, you said in his report, Mangakala adopted evaluation date of 10th July 2018, and you said, however, instructed that Mangakala reference to 10th July 2018 are likely an error.
I can see that, and that was an instruction
So
given to
was your instruction from lawyers?
me. Yes, exactly.
But what was your opinion?
I had no opinion on the valuation date.
Thank you very much.
It is outside my area of expertise.
Yes, my colleague will ask you some questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I've just got a few questions to ask. I want to get it correct, whether I should use Madam Wall or Vicky. I just want to make sure that you are comfortable with the way I address
I
you.
am comfortable either way. It was Vic. I've never been called, which made me laugh. But Vicky
Maybe
or
we are
Mrs. Wall is
mispronouncing
fine.
your name, so if we don't want to make you uncomfortable.
Either
so-
way is fine. Ms. Wall, Mrs. Wall, or Vicky is
Yeah,
fine.
because we come from a different region. But
Yeah, it was just making me
so,
laugh.
Madam Wall, I will prefer to call you Madam Wall.
Thank you very much.
My questions are basically about understanding, because we want to have an understanding of your approach as contrasted to that approach taken by Mr. Mwangakala. And here we are making reference to either cost approach or the market approach. And you as an expert, you have to assist the tribunal to come to a conclusion of which should be the most appropriate method. So now my first question, just for understanding, is that your instructions were to quantify the losses, if that is the proper terminology, or the amount of compensation that Winshear would be entitled in Tanzania. Is that a correct understanding?
Not quite. I would say
Yes.
Winshear's investment in the S&P Gold project. And
So
I
the
understood-
SMP project in Tanzania.
Yes.
Okay. And now the understanding also is that Winshear is a parent company. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that has a subsidiary in Tanzania. Is that correct also?
Yes, it has a 100% owned, a fully owned subsidiary.
In Tanzania.
In
That is
Tanzania.
Bafex Tanzania Limited, correct?
Correct.
So the SMP project is the subject of your evaluation, right?
Yes.
Now, you have also indicated that in your review, you were provided with quarterly reports from Helio. Is that correct?
The quarterly financial statements, the interim
Quarterly
ones.
financial statements.
Agreed,
from,
yes.
From Helio, right?
Yes.
But you were also provided with audited financial statements from Helio.
Yes.
Now, with regards to Bafex Tanzania Limited, were you also provided with audited financial statements of Bafex Tanzania Limited?
I was provided with those. I can't recall if it was the time of my first report or my second report.
My question is simple, Madam Wall. Were you provided with those audited financial statements for Bafex Tanzania Limited?
And my answer was, I don't recall. I can have a look at Appendix B and see whether I listed it, because if I did, I would to do. If you can take me to my Appendix B, I can tell you the answer.
Yes, but you know what? My question, I've said, we want to have an understanding. So it's a simple question, whether you were provided with financial statements for Bafex Tanzania Limited or not, or you don't remember.
I don't remember if I had seen every single one or at what time, because I looked to use Winshear's consolidated financial statements and not BTL's. I know by the time of the second report, I definitely had the one for 2015 because I did some analysis and sample testing of it. And I know by the time of the second report, I had them all. But I don't recall when between them I had. It wasn't something I looked to do at the time of my first report.
Yes, but my question is, were you provided with audited financial statements of Bafex Tanzania Limited?
And I said I don't recall when, but by the time of my second report, and I'm aware that they are part of evidence as
So
of
they
today.
provided you with the audited financial reports?
Yes, by the time of my second report, I would have
Thank
had.
you. That's the answer I wanted.
Okay.
But also, were you provided with quarterly reports of BAFEX Tanzania, those not financial reports, but the quarterly reports that were submitted to the government authorities in Tanzania?
I was provided with some of them early on, and then I understand by the time of the second report, there were more of these reports. I didn't use them, and I can explain why, if that would be helpful.
I just want the understanding. So if I will need the explanation, I will tell you. But now, if you said you are also a chartered accountant, now, for your understanding, if someone wanted to know the investment cost of BAFEX Tanzania between those two records of Helio Resources and BAFEX Tanzania Limited, which one would have been the most appropriate source of information?
I wasn't looking for the investment cost of BAFEX Tanzania. I was looking at the investment in the SMP Gold project. So I think they are, I don't know if they are one and the same question. For the SMP Gold project, I wanted to look at the Winshear consolidated financial statements, which included fully the BTL financial statements. If I wanted to look more at BTL, then I would have gone to the BTL financial statements. But that wasn't what I was asked to look at.
Yes, but we need to, I need to understand this, this concept. I'm saying BTL Tanzania Limited had audited financial statements.
Agreed.
And Helio also had audited financial statements.
Agreed.
Now I'm asking you, if you were to choose, if you wanted to know the cost incurred in the project by BAFEX Tanzania Limited, which source would you choose between the two?
That wasn't what I looked for, but hypothetically, if I wanted to know what was invested by BAFEX Tanzania Limited, I would look at BAFEX Tanzania Limited, but that wasn't what I was looking to do.
So what were you looking at?
I was looking at the costs, or the investment, and by which I first looked at the costs of the SMP Gold project, and not just BAFEX Tanzania Limited. And as I've explained, sorry.
Yeah. So do you want to tell this tribunal that Winshear had another project other than SMP project in Tanzania?
That wasn't what I said at all. I said there were additional costs on top of those exploration costs that were incurred by BAFEX Tanzania. So that was the majority of the 46 million. Just over 33 million was the exploration costs that would have been incurred in BAFEX Tanzania Limited. But I've also included 1.6 million of acquisition costs that were recorded in the consolidated Winshear financial statements, and of about 11 million was my pro rata of other related expenditure, without which I believe the exploration activity would not have happened, and that is what I've included, which I consider to be appropriate under IBS and under Civil Road rules.
My question was, does Winshear have another project apart from SMP in Tanzania?
No. Sorry, the answer is I don't believe it does.
It doesn't. So it means the cost for SMP project would be the same as the cost, overall cost for BAFEX Tanzania Limited?
I disagree.
Yes.
Would you like me to explain
yes,
why?
Yes, please.
Because I have included not just the costs that were incurred under the exploration activities, but the wider costs. As I said in my presentation at the start, I've got the cost of the license, the acquisition of the licenses, and other directly related activities, such as the cost of the auditors, for instance.
Okay, so now in your presentation, you indicated three categories of costs. So you had exploration costs, which is around 33 million.
Agreed.
And then you had acquisition costs, 1.6 Canadian million. And then you also have other cost and operating expenses, 11.1 million, right?
Around 11 million.
Yes, around.
Agreed.
Now let's go to this figure of 33 million,
okay,
which you allocate as exploration cost in Tanzania.
I didn't allocate them, but I have, yes, I have said that
Pardon?
they are. It was the financial statements that allocated them, but yes.
So who allocated the 33 million? The financial
The
statement?
financial statements, I
Okay.
picked up the figure, so I have
Yeah.
used the figure, but I didn't allocate. It
No,
was the
it's fine.
figure.
I'm sorry for that, sorry. But now, 33 million point something, that is
33
the
point-
exploration cost for Tanzania. So my question will be, if we go to Bafex Tanzania Limited and go through their audited financial statements for all those years, we will get to that figure of 33 point 6. Is it 33 point? Let me get the figure correct.
So I got it from table 5.3, and I think for the period from 1st of January 2006 to 31st of December 2019, it would be more or less the same figure if you included the from the Bafex Tanzania Limited's costs. I'm saying more or less because I don't know if there was any reassignment or any reclassification. I don't believe so for my 1 year that I looked at for 2015, but there could be. What is different between Winshear's and Bafex Tanzania is they are stated in different currencies. So you would need to take each figure from Bafex Tanzania and translate it at the appropriate Canadian dollars, because that's the functional currency of Winshear, probably for each quarter, and convert it at the appropriate exchange rate for that quarter, and then add it up, because obviously the Tanzanian shilling has strengthened over the period.
So thank you for that explanation. So you explained about consolidation, that the Helios, which is we are referring also as Winshear, consolidated financial statement included cost from Tanzania. Is that correct?
From Bafex Tanzania Limited, yes. Agreed.
So my question is now, if this 33 million is from Tanzania, if we go to Bafex Tanzania Limited audited financial statements, using the appropriate exchange rate, we will get this 33.3 million as exploration cost in Tanzania.
You would there or thereabouts. As I said, there might be a tiny bit of reclassification. I don't know, because I haven't repeated the exercise for the whole period. When I did in 2015, it was pretty much the same amount. I didn't know the exact exchange rate used, so I think it was about 9,000, like 1% out, because I was estimating the exchange rate. But yes, it should be more or less the same amount.
So you agree with me that if we take the audited financial statements from Tanzania and use the appropriate exchange rate during that period, we will get a total of 33.3 million as exploration cost from Tanzania.
I haven't repeated it apart from for 2015, but that is my understanding.
So that is your understanding, correct?
Yes, it would be consolidated. What I'm saying is, if the costs in 1 year were reclassified and weren't considered exploration but were put into another category, I can't tell that without having a look in each year. But all of the costs of Bafex Tanzania Limited will be included within Winshear. Whether it's all included in exploration costs, I would assume so, but I don't know for certain. It was in 2015.
So, well, that is the difficulty I had, and you said you are also an accountant. If Bafex Tanzania Limited had quarterly reports, had audited financial statements, and one wanted to know the cost of an investment in Tanzania, then why not go to quarterly reports by Bafex Tanzania Limited? Why not go to Bafex audited financial statements, and you get the figure there?
Because I am a chartered accountant, I considered it more appropriate to use Winshear's consolidated financial statements that would state everything in the appropriate currency and would include all of Bafex Tanzania Limited's cost within there, and would also include the other costs that I considered to be relevant, which I wouldn't find within Bafex Tanzania Limited. And I was trying to quantify Winshear's investment in the S&P Gold project.
Okay. Now, I will leave it there. I will leave it there on the issue of choice of maybe last question. So if someone calculates Bafex Tanzania Limited, let's say, audited financial statement, and does not get to that figure of 33.3 million Canadian dollars, what would you say?
I would say maybe it was included within another category and wasn't within exploration costs. But I have to say, I did it on the back of an envelope yesterday, and I got very, very close to it if you translated at the average kind of rate for the quarter. So it may be reclassified into another category because I haven't repeated the exercise exactly. So it may not be within exploration costs. It could be within other admin costs in the other category.
Okay.
I can't say that for certain. In 2015, it wasn't.
Thank you. Now, let's also go to the cost of acquisition, 1.6 million. I'm just estimating because myself, I'm not an accountant, but the cost of acquisition now, which is 1.6, that is a summary somewhere. 1.6, would you agree with me that the figure you know, so that we save time? No, it's the, that makes a total of the base cost. I think it's 1.6 million, right? The acquisition cost.
The cost
Is that correct?
of acquiring, yes.
Yes. So now, I'm also having a difficulty in understanding. So, why those cost of acquisition, or will it be appropriate for those cost of acquisition to be included in the Bafex Tanzania Limited audited financials?
I would also have difficulty understanding that because it wasn't included in Bafex Tanzania. It was included in Winshear's consolidated financial statement, and that is why I used Winshear's consolidated financial statement to include such costs, because I consider them relevant when I calculate the cost of investment in the S&P Gold project to Winshear. But I agree with you, you wouldn't find those in, wouldn't expect to find them in Bafex Tanzania Limited's consolidated, in their financial statements.
So if someone wanted to acquire Bafex Tanzania Limited in Tanzania, so it means that acquisition cost will not be part of their records. Is that what you are saying?
I didn't, yes, but I didn't look to acquire Bafex Tanzania Limited. That wasn't my calculation. But if you're asking me hypothetically, if I was looking to acquire Bafex Tanzania Limited, yes, I would agree. I don't think they were included in their financial statements. It was in Winshear's consolidated financial statements.
Yes, but we are talking of Bafex Tanzania Limited. If someone wanted to acquire Bafex Tanzania Limited, then those costs will not be part of the historical cost of Bafex Tanzania Limited.
I would need to see them. I haven't looked at their financial statements lately. If we take them to, they're definitely included within Winshear's consolidated financial statements.
I'm just putting it as a concept. You are an accountant and I'm not. I'm saying if someone went to Tanzania and wanted to acquire a Bafex Tanzania Limited, will this cost of acquisition be part of the historical cost of Bafex Tanzania Limited?
I would double check whether any of these costs are included within Bafex Tanzania Limited's financial statements. They're definitely included within Winshear's financial
Forget
statements.
about including them. You know, you were explaining as an expert. Would you include them as part of historical costs in Tanzania? That's a question.
I consider that they are the historical cost of the S&P Gold project.
So they will be part of the historical cost in Tanzania, right?
Of the S&P Gold project, which was located in Tanzania. But I'm not saying all of these costs were included in Bafex Tanzania Limited's financial statement. I'm saying the opposite. I'm
not saying they have been included. I'm saying, would you include them if you were calculating historical cost for Tanzania?
I would include them in the S&P Gold project located in Tanzania, and I have.
But Madam, we have said that there is nothing else when we talk of Tanzania and SMP is the same thing because there is no other project in Tanzania.
I'm going the other way. I'm saying there are wider costs to be included. I'm not saying there's anything else in Tanzania that I have excluded. I'm saying there are additional costs to include in addition to Bafex Tanzania Limited.
So 1.6 million acquisition cost will be part of the acquisition of the historical cost of Bafex Tanzania Limited.
No, I'm saying of the SMP Gold project.
But SMP is owned by Bafex Tanzania Limited.
The definition is Winshear's investment in the SMP Gold project.
Anyway, I think I'm having a difficulty in understanding. So let's move to the other operating expenses
Okay.
that you have also included, because I want to understand, because I failed to understand the others, but maybe. Now let's go to the, you have included in that summary other operating expenses and other is called, it was other costs and the operating expenses. That is, you summarized it around 11.1 million in your presentation.
Great.
Is that correct?
That's
Maybe we can let's have a look on your presentation, because let's just have a look on your presentation quickly, if we can retrieve it, just quickly, because this is an important point. Can we get back to the screen? The presentation that was made today, there is a summary of these three categories of costs.
It was sent by email,
Can
so
open-
you will find it in
But if we
email.
because we are also trying to wind up, so in the interest of time, because I just need to have an understanding of
It's
this
about
concept.
I agree with you. It's about 11 million.
Yeah, 11.1
In,
million.
in
Yeah.
your presentation on page 11, it says 11.18 million.
0.18 million.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, if that's what
That's-
you're
I
reading
don't
off
know
my
whether it's
presentation.
correct.
I was-
This is what I read.
Yeah,
I
so if
just
it's
want to be-
11.18, it's
because-
closer to 11.2 million, which is my hesitation of saying 11.1.
I'm sorry, because the witness is trying to avoid my numbers, so I don't want to make a mistake. If we can get that on the screen.
No,
I would
I'm
appreciate
agreeing. If you're reading me the presentation, I was avoiding the reference to 11.1 because at 11.18 it would be approximately 11.2 million.
But we are not doing calculations. We are trying to understand the concept. Yes.
In which case, at around 11 million is fine.
Yeah, it's just the concept. Can we
Okay.
get it on the screen? Because we don't want to talk something that is non-existent.
Nope.
Oh. So we let's just proceed, Madam President, so that we save
Well,
time.
I don't know whether the claimants can access the screen, in which case it might be easier for them to retrieve the presentation.
I am happy to take your word for it.
Yeah.
We are working on it, Madam President, and
Yes.
get it up as soon as possible.
They're trying to put it on the screen.
Now we have it on screen. I think now you need to unplug.
Yes, you need to get out.
So here
Yes,
we go.
good. Now, go to page 11. Yes, this one.
Yeah, this is the other operating costs, which total 11,180,524. There's a summary table at the start,
that
but it
gives
has
you a
this-
total of 46 million.
Yeah, it has the same figure in it. It's the-
Yes,
keep
I
going
just
higher.
need to see that summary.
There you go.
Yeah,
No, you've just
it's
gone
here.
past it. There it is. It's the same
Thank you.
figure.
That's the figure. So let's now talk about this 11,1800,524. You have included this as other operating income and expenses, right?
Yes.
And this also in your statement you have used as overheads.
I'm not sure if I've used it as overheads, but I would accept it's kind of equivalent to overheads.
No, you tell us, will it be equivalent to overheads?
Okay. Sorry, where do I say that?
I'm just asking, you are an accountant, to help us. If we say other operating income and expenses, they can also be called overheads. Will that be correct? Or what is the most appropriate terminology?
Well, I think that's why I've called it the slightly unwieldy name of other operating income and expenses, because they're not all that much overhead in nature. But I'm happy to label them as such for now, if it's quicker for you.
Now, let's take an assumption that this project, the SMP project, went to into production, right? Let's
Okay.
take that assumption.
Yes.
Now, it means they will start operations and they will be liable to pay taxes and to prepare financial statements. Is that correct? The normal practice.
I mean, they were already preparing financial statements, but yes, their financial statements would record the operating activities.
Now, this 11 million, will it be included in Bafex Tanzania Limited as the CAPEX, as the capital expenditure?
Insofar as it is relating to Winshear, and as I said before, there might be a little parts of it that have been reclassified that weren't exploration costs, but assuming all of those have come from Winshear's own company records, they wouldn't be included in Bafex Tanzania Limited's costs, and I wouldn't imagine that they would therefore be included within their financial statements. And not included in their tax records. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, I missed that. So you are saying 11 million will not be part of the capital expenditure of Bafex Tanzania Limited under the SMP project?
I haven't checked to see whether any of that amount is included within Bafex Tanzania's accounts, because, as I said, I was using Winshear's consolidated financial statements. For 2015, for example, that would be true. It wouldn't be, none of that would be included within Bafex Tanzania Limited.
But my question, I need to, I don't know how to explain myself, but I'm just saying, let's assume this project goes into production. Now the question is, will, as an accountant, do you include this 11 million as part of the operating expenses for SMP project?
It is a different question from what I was looking at. I was looking for a valuation of the SMP project, and therefore I included the costs and the other related costs without which the exploration activity I consider would not have been able to occur. But that is a different question to what would be included as CAPEX, or capital expenditure, which I don't think it would be anyway. I think it's more likely to be operating expenditure, so OPEX. Whether it would be included in Bafex Tanzania Limited. Now I said, so there's two parts to that. If we make the assumption, as in 2015, that none of that was included in Bafex Tanzania Limited, but it's all come from the parent company, Winshear, then you make the correct assumption that it would not be included as OPEX or CAPEX within BTL's financial statements. But that was why I used the consolidated financial statements.
I just want to make sure that we understand each other correctly. Let's forget about the assumptions you used to make the calculations. We want to help the tribunal understand, and myself to understand, on whether or not supposedly this project becomes operational in Tanzania. Will these 11 million be part of the operating or capital expenditure of SMP project? That is the question. Your opinion on that, if any.
Can repeat the answer again. If everything is if I saw in 2015 and all of that amount was included in the parent company and none of it was included in Bafex Tanzania Limited, and I don't know whether that's true for the whole of the 11 million, I imagine the vast majority that is true, definitely in 2015 it's true, then it would not be included in Bafex Tanzania Limited's accounts, whether it was operating or not. It would be in the consolidated Winshear accounts.
Dr. Mahindi, are you asking whether expenses like this in the future would be included within? But that's what I thought. Okay.
Sorry,
That
I
is my
misunderstood.
question. In the
Okay.
future, will you include this as part of the operating or capital expenditure of SMP project?
I'm just looking at the types of expenses in order to see whether that's true or not. And to be fair, it's probably not an answer for me. It's some of it may have actually been for the Winshear's management to see what they might have moved to Tanzania. Some, for example, some of the auditor's cost may well have been incurred in Tanzania because I know there was a proportion that we have allocated. Maybe that would be as operating. I've got some consulting fees, amortization. Isn't included in a cash flow, but certain types may be. The amortization, sorry, may or may not be, depending what is the amortization of in the future. The travel of the holding company would not be, because that's to do with the holding company, I imagine. So most of these are not operating expenses of a day-to-day transaction in the future. The other ones are allowance for doubtful debts. There may well be some similar types of ones that you would see, not necessarily the same debts. Some bank charges and interest may well be relevant, not necessarily the same ones. Property management fees, shareholder communication, if it's related to Winshear, would not be in BTLs. So I think you need to look on a line-by-line basis and kind of go through. Apologies for misunderstanding. You were talking about future.
I'm sorry that I asked a question that you have not responded, and maybe let me skip it and move to another question.
Okay.
Yes. Now, we have also been talking about this in your presentation, and you have also been asked about the Shanta transaction. So here also, I wanted to have an understanding of some key issues on whether we will be on the same page, just to have an understanding. Now, the first assumption is that, and my understanding, that this Shanta arrangement was entered into between Shanta and Hirio around June 2017. Is that correct?
I agree.
Now, also, the laws that at the center of this dispute were enacted sometime around July 2017. Is that correct?
I'm afraid I don't have that to hand, but I'm happy to accept that from you.
But Madam Wall, you discussed about cutoff dates and you have read the memorial. So I'm just asking your recollection. Is it correct that the laws were enacted in July?
I can see from the
Let's see on the
C081
screen,
that you
for
put
example.
up that says 7th of July 2017, so I'm very happy to. However, in my report, I was instructed to quantify the S&P Gold project starting from its beginning in 2006.
But I'm not talking about the quantification.
You asked if
Please,
that was
sorry,
my opinion.
sorry.
And I'm saying I'm very happy to use that and agree with you that it's the
Yeah,
7th of
but-
July 2017. It's just not something that I covered in my report.
Thank you very much, Madam Wall. You just listen to my questions. I'm just saying, okay, now let's now go to the screen. We have the Written Laws Miscellaneous Amendment Act. So you agree that this law was enacted in July 2017?
I agree that seems reasonable given the Act supplement that you're putting on the screen in front of me. It's not really within my area of expertise or when exactly it was enacted from
Okay.
this.
Let's forget about the law now. The sequence, we have said that the Shanta arrangement was in June. Is that correct?
Agreed.
And then the law is amended in July 2017. That's also correct.
I agree.
So if someone says that the Shanta arrangement was entered into before the amendments of the law, will that be correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, you have also indicated in your presentation today that the transaction between Shanta and Helio was under duress. Is that correct? Can we go back to your presentation so that we are sure? The presentation, the PowerPoint presentation for today. Nisha, the presentation, PowerPoint.
Dr. Luende, I'm a little concerned about the time that you have left, and so I do not want that we spend too much time on locating documents or so. Ms. Wall, I remember you referring to duress in your presentation.
Great.
And you have on the screen, you have now page 16 of your presentation that summarizes the reasons why you did not consider in the end the Shanta transaction.
Agreed, and the term under duress I was using for Mr. Williams's evidence. This is not my opinion. I have used the claimant's case and Mr. Williams's evidence.
Okay, so it was under duress or compulsion. That is.
Those were the words used by Mr. Williams in his evidence.
So, according to your understanding, now you agree with Mr. Richard Williams that this transaction was under duress?
No, I'm using, I can understand what he is saying, and I'm using his evidence that on the sale to say that based on that evidence, it wasn't an IVS definition of market value. I'm not opining on Mr. Williams's evidence, although I did also look at analyst report at the time of the market, and they said at the time of the transaction, the market was already impacted, was reacting. For example, the Sprott opinion makes reference to Shanta's share price being undervalued because of the market's views on the actions that Tanzania was taking at the time.
Okay, so the problem is you are not answering the question and we spend too much time. So now, if I rephrase my question, one of the reasons you rejected the market approach was that Shanta transaction was under duress.
Well, I didn't use the market approach for a number of reasons. As I said at the front, my normal market approach is using a multiple. But I did look at the Shanta transaction, and one of the reasons for me not using it, and one of the key reasons, is that I didn't think it was the appropriate test at the time because it was already impacted by the market's view of the actions in Tanzania.
But you know, the reason why now you are avoiding my question, I don't know why, but let's see, for example, Mr. Williams' evidence is that Winshear was effectively compelled to sell by Tanzania actions. And now when you go to the next section, you say basis fails the IVS definition of market value as there is no willing seller with a sale with proper marketing and acting without compulsion. Now, I'm asking you a question that one of the reasons to reject the market approach was that the Shanta Winshear transaction was under compulsion. One of the reasons. Is it one of the reasons or not?
It is one of the reasons, but it's not just
No,
the market
but
approach.
I did not say, you see.
No, I'm disagreeing with your
But
use of the
sorry.
term.
No, it's fine. But I'm sorry. I'm asking questions. I want an answer. Now you explain everything that I have not asked.
With respect, I didn't agree that I could answer because I was just explaining it's not just market approach. I would agree with you if you said one of the 4 reasons, the key reasons that I rejected the proposed Shanta transaction and not the whole of the market approach was to do with the fact that I felt it was a deal under duress and wasn't representative of the true market value absent the Tanzania conditions. Clearly it was the value at the time because it was done and accepted, but I didn't consider it was appropriate for my task here.
So I asked the question that one of the reasons, I did not say it's all the reasons, I said one of the reasons for you to reject the Shanta Winshear transaction was that it was under compulsion or under duress.
I agreed.
The answer should have been
No,
yes.
no, because you didn't put it like that before. I would have agreed.
No, let's not argue and just proceed.
Okay, in which
It's
case,
obvious
as long as
that
you
it's one of
understood.
the reasons, but
Yes.
it's also obvious that this is a question of assessment of the facts, which
Agreed.
is in the end for the tribunal, and you have
Absolutely.
simply taken Mr. Williams' evidence
Yes.
and nothing but that.
Yes. Well, and the market and the analyst approach. The
And of
analyst views.
course, the definition of the market value.
Sorry, and I was just also saying, and also the analysts at the time, so what I read from the analysts that I put in my report.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Dr. Ruende, you can carry on, please.
But just to confirm that you were also presented with a press release from Helio, which denied the reasons given by Shanta to walk away from the transaction.
I saw the press release, and they denied that the conditions constituted an adverse material effect, or words to that effect, because they still wanted to go ahead with the deal at that time. That doesn't change my view that the evidence that Mr. Williams has given is that it was a sale acting with compulsion.
Now, let's assume that this Shanta transaction was completed.
Okay.
Did you go to that extent if the Shanta Winshear transaction was completed?
I think I would have been in a different position had, well, it wouldn't have gone, the whole place wouldn't have gone ahead, but yes, had it been an actual transaction, I would have been able to use it. I looked to use it in my first report. It was obviously evidence that was very helpful, and it wasn't just that, it was because it didn't complete, there was no new merged entity, for example, to use.
So if you, as an expert, because we are talking to an expert here, if the transaction, I'm just saying in a hypothetical situation, if this transaction went on, how much would have been the market value in your own assessment?
Well,
if you were in a position to answer.
That's the question. What would have been the value? I tried to approximate, but it's in my report at paragraph 4418 of my second report. But I thought it was so subjective that I didn't want to go ahead and use it because sorry, do you want me to stop there? Also, had it gone ahead, it would have been a different entity, but I still would have understood Shanta's share price to have been tainted at that time. And if I need to consider Shanta's share price, but for Tanzania's actions, I consider it would have been higher. It was clearly Shanta's share price at that time, but its fair market value in order to use for my S&P gold project calculation. I didn't feel it was appropriate because it was also influenced by the market's view of Tanzania's actions.
So I did not get that. If the transaction was completed, how much would have been the value in your assessment?
My very rough calculation here, at 4418 takes more than that. It says, had it completed and had Shanta's share price, for instance, been 50% higher because they had more or less tracked the ARCA Gold Miners Index. I wasn't sure what Mr. Mangakala's view was. I think you said 9.53 in your opening, in which case I was giving more 70 to 130 million before interest. But
Pardon?
it was a very subjective, which is why I was trying to use it and why I did not put it forward as my own valuation. I used it kind of as a cross-check along with the figures in the PEA.
So I have missed that. So when you did your cross-check, how much would have been the market
very last sentence,
value?
but I'm
Okay.
not standing by it.
43 million, is that what you're
It's
saying?
an illustration, 72 to 130, 129 million if you start off with a 9.53 million valuation. But it's an illustration. I feel it's very subjective, and I didn't use it as my primary valuation. I used the cost approach because I felt it was more reliable than using very subjective uplifts to the Shanta transaction if it had completed and if Shanta's share price had been higher and not tainted by the views in the market.
Okay. So let's assume that, so that what you are saying, the market price would have been 72 million to 129 million. Is that correct?
No, I'm saying my view of the S&P Gold project.
Pardon?
My view of the S&P, the investment in the S&P Gold project. So the equivalent valuation to my cost approach plus return was this figure.
No, but we are talking of the market value.
Yeah.
So if the Shanta transaction was completed, what would have been the market value of the Herio's investment in Tanzania?
So that alone, without uplifting for Shanta?
Yes, without.
That's the previous paragraph.
Yes.
And if your figure is 9.53 million, I suggested a range of 48 to 86 million Canadian dollars. But I'm doing this, sorry, this is a paragraph 4417 at the bottom of the page. But I'm doing this very much as a finger in the air, as an illustration.
Yeah.
And this is because of the relative difference between Winshear and Shanta, and considering what a merged entity might be. And I'm using the Sprott.
Okay, so you were
report
saying the market price would have been 48 to 86 million. Is that correct?
It's an illustration. I think it's very subjective. And
Yes,
I
I'm
didn't
just
feel
saying-
it's a reliable approach, which is why I use the historical cost approach and not
We
this one.
are talking of an illustration here because the transaction did not go on.
Exactly.
So I'm saying if you had modeled that as if it was completed, is this what you get as the market price at that time?
Yes, before uplifting for the views of the Shanta's perceived undervalue from the market.
And what do you mean by uplifting?
Increasing.
Increase. So can we go back to, you're also talking of uplifting 5 to 9 times. Is that correct?
That's exactly that's how I got that figure. It's 5 to 9 times.
And why
9
did
million.
you uplift it to 5 to 9 times?
I was considering, in the Sprott valuation report, the relative difference between the market multiples of Shanta and Winshear, Helio, and what a newly merged entity would be. That was their figures.
But you were also asked a question as an expert that if someone wanted to buy in the market this SMP project, so they would pay 120 million Canadian dollars. Is that your opinion?
So I'm not sure whether 120 would be my 116.1 million,
Around
that.
yeah.
This is my but-for figure. If it had been absent the alleged actions that we're talking about here, of Tanzania's actions, how much would it have been? Yes, this is what I consider a fair market value valuation of the investment would be. And I was trying here to give an alignment, and I was also looking as a cross-check to the figures in the PEA, albeit in 2012 and with different gold prices and everything else, just to see if I'm looking in the right kind of ballpark. and then my other cross-check being the PEM, the multiples.
But I also want to confirm one thing that you were also asked by my colleagues.
Yep.
Is that the SMP project had detention licenses and prospecting licenses.
Agreed.
So I want to confirm that in your calculations, you have included the whole project. Is
I
that
have.
correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, maybe two more questions, then I will be done. When you go to consider returns on cost, you consider several factors. So, as an expert, I would like to know the industry-specific and unique features. For example, the mining industry. Did you consider, when you were talking of return on cost, the mining sector specific features?
Yes, I did.
Like the issue of cost, the operating cost?
I wasn't carrying out an income approach at DCF, so I didn't consider the operating cost. What I considered what would be an appropriate rate of return, and my exhibit was to one or two industry reports that showed that kind of 8% to 12% is typically used as a return and equivalently a discount rate in mining projects. 8% was used, for example, in the PEA, which has a discount rate which can be used. And then the other way I used it was in the multiple, my cross-check, as I was explaining in my presentation, what the implied multiple is under the multiple of exploration expenditure method, and how that the returns that I used fitted in with that. So at kind of 1.6 to 1.8, if you're talking about low risk returns, and more like, I think it was between 2.1, 2.5 and 3, if you are looking at returns of between 8, 10 and 12% for an advanced stage exploration project, or an early stage in the developmental kind of accounting valuation world of a project.
Okay, so did you also consider, for example, the gold price in the past 10 years or so, how it fluctuates?
I think that's a very interesting question about how the gold price impacts valuation. In the cost approach, the gold price is not considered and won't impact it.
We are talking on the rate of return. So when you were looking at the rate of return, did you consider that this investment is in the mining sector and it is about gold? So hypothetically, the rate of return might have been affected by a number of factors, including the fluctuation of gold cost, for example.
I agree, and this is one of the many reasons that I provided the tribunal with a range of returns. I didn't just say this is the answer, I provided a range of returns. The fact of not considering the gold price within the cost approach is more, I guess, that I understood Winshear's evidence, or Mr. Williams' evidence, was within the terms of the retention licence, they could slightly wait for more favourable conditions. So at a very low gold price, they may not have minded a slightly more favourable gold price within the terms of when they would have taken it. But I agree, the cost approach does not take that into account, but the range of returns may well.
Okay. So did you also consider that this investment was in Africa, but also in Tanzania? When you were calculating the rate of return, at the back of your mind, did you consider?
I gave an example of Tanzanian bond rate as one of the possible ones. So that's an equivalent rate of another investment within Tanzania, and that has been one of the ranges in my fair market valuation. The rate of returns of between 8% and 12% is a general rate.
So if you make a comparison of treasury bills or the bond rates, are they similar to a mining project?
They are similar for an investment. So I thought it was helpful for the tribunal to see what the equivalent would have been at a low risk investment of Tanzanian bond rate.
So if we
a
compare the bond
comparison.
and the mining sector, which one is more risky?
Oh, absolutely. The mining industry is more risky, which is why there's a higher return associated with it, because risk and return are obviously interrelated.
But also, you have heard, you were present when we did these proceedings. You have also heard the claimant alleging that there was an economic war in Tanzania, right?
I have heard those allegations, yes.
Economic war.
I have heard those words, yes.
Now, when you were considering your rate of return and everything, did you take into account that economic war?
I deliberately did not take into account the actions of Tanzania, because my understanding is I do the investment of the S&P gold projects without the actions of the Tanzanian government. They still had the retention licenses and they hadn't changed.
Pardon?
That was what I...
No, I heard the retention license. I'm listening. I missed that.
Madam
no,
President.
I've finished.
Pardon? They still have the retention licenses.
No, without the retention licenses. Oh, sorry. Yes, that is.
Madam President, I think we need an account of time, because
Yes,
at least according to
am-
my smartwatch, we are way over the allocated budget.
No, we are watching the time, and it is true that the respondent has, I had 9, but if you say 8, it's something like that. Yes.
Okay.
Now,
Madam,
these are certainly
just
important
2,
questions.
3 more
But
minutes. I
yes,
should be done.
you need a little time for your redirect from Mr. Mwangakala. So, I mean, the procedural order provides for a short extension if necessary, and if the time remaining for the hearing allows us. So we don't need to be absolutely strict about the time allocation, but so you know that now you should make sure that you can get to a close of this examination if possible.
Sure, Madam President. I think a maximum of 5 minutes.
That's fine, that's fine.
Because my questions to the expert was to be able to have also an understanding on our side on some of these issues. That's the reason why I was asking those questions. So now, as I'm wrapping up, so for your correction, those retention licenses, are they still owned by the claimants?
No.
What about the retention licenses?
So I thought you said the retention
Sorry,
licenses.
the prospecting licenses, the 9 prospecting licenses.
I'm not an expert opining on this, but clearly I have sat here and heard that the prospecting licenses...
But it's not an issue of expertise, it's just common knowledge. So whether you know, are they in operations or are not in
I have answered that many times, and I have said it's not relevant because I understood the value of the prospecting licenses was lost alongside the retention licenses.
But they are not relevant to who now? The
To
question.
my instruction to value.
Yes,
the
but I'm
S&P
asking
gold
you,
project.
the question is a relevant question for me, so you
Okay.
answer it.
Please.
If it's
Sorry,
not
could you ask again?
relevant to you, it is relevant to
No,
me.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's, with due respect, I agree, they, as far as I'm aware, still retained the prospecting licenses. It was just...
So I was asking, are you aware that the claimants, are they still in operations in Tanzania?
I heard the evidence yesterday that they had lapsed.
They closed.
Lapsed, was what I had heard.
The retention, sorry, the prospecting licenses.
I had
they
heard
have
the evidence
lapsed.
that they had lapsed.
Start your question again, sir.
I'm just saying that according to your understanding and knowledge is that the 9 prospecting licenses have also, they lapsed. That's what you say.
That was what I heard yesterday.
Okay. Now let's finish with the information about IFC. Just to conclude my questioning
Okay.
You were present when Mr. Richard Williams was testifying, right?
I was.
And then from your recollection, even today, you said that IFC sold their shares, right?
Yes. Yes.
Do you remember the time when they sold their shares?
No. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. But definitely it would be after 2017, right?
No, I don't know if it was after 2017. Apologies. I know it was after 2010. I'm happy to be told.
So it was after the Shanta transaction or before it?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for advice. I actually can't remember anymore.
Okay, no, it's fine. If you don't remember, it's fine. Because that is, if you remember. If you don't remember, it's fine.
I'm sorry, I don't remember
No, it's
right
fine.
this second.
It's fine. If you don't remember, it's fine.
Yeah.
Because, you know, memory is memory. But Mr. Williams also made a statement that the purchase price, the share purchase price was slightly lower or higher than, was slightly lower than the Shanta transaction.
It was around, yeah, it was
or
something
around
similar.
the same.
Yes, that was what the evidence, that they had fallen a lot and due to the actions.
So if I assume that from the time of Shanta transaction to the time of IFC transaction, the share price of Helio remained more or less similar. Would that be correct?
Apologies that I can't remember the dates. I think what you're saying is a fair summary. I haven't looked into the share price of Helio, and so it's very hard to kind of comment on that.
But we were commenting on the statement made by Mr. Richard Williams. It's not the documents we are talking about. But you are free to, if you don't remember, it's fine.
Fine.
It's fine, because I cannot.
Apologies. The ones we were talking about earlier, I had considered fully and included in my report. What you're talking about now, I looked at the investment in the project, but I hadn't looked at the sale. In fact, I didn't know until yesterday that the IFC was sold, and definitely not the price.
Madam President, I will keep my word. Thank you very much for the additional time. Yes, now that marks the end of my cross-examination, but also thank you very much, Madam Wall, for this opportunity. Thank you.
I suppose you have some redirect questions?
Yes, some very short redirect.
Yes, and the tribunal will have some questions as well, and I'm not certain they will be very short. So maybe it would make sense, because we have been going for an hour 45, and it's late in the day for the court reporter. Maybe we should have a short break now, and we might go a little bit over 5:30, but I suppose that is fine, and we need to finish this examination today, so tomorrow we can proceed with the respondent's last witness. So let's take, is 10 minutes sufficient? Yes, fine. Let's resume at 5:10.
We are ready, Madam President. Sorry.
So the claimant's ready as well for redirect questions?
Yes, Madam President, we are. Now, Ms. Wall, our friend was discussing the Shanta transaction with you this afternoon, and at 16:39 and 20 seconds, and I'm referring to the transcript, you said in the context when discussing the Shanta transaction, and I quote, clearly it was the value at the time because they were done and accepted. Now, what were you talking about? Were you talking about fair market value?
Apologies for that. I said clearly what I meant to say. Oh, sorry. What I meant to say was that the proposed Shanta transaction was accepted at the time by Helio, clearly, because they had entered into the agreement. But I consider it to be what was acceptable to them, given the conditions at the time, and isn't the same as what I was asked to calculate for the S&P Gold project.
Okay, no further questions.
Thank you. Do my colleagues have questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Mrs. Wall,
Hi.
the question that's been sort of bouncing around in my mind for a while is why did you not, at any point in this, look at the traded value of Helio? In 2017, as I understand from your testimony and other testimony, all Helio owned was S&P. So this Helio share price would represent, at any point in time at least, well, that was the only asset of Helio, what the market thought that asset was worth. So why not, I know you have a problem with the middle of 2017, why not take a share price sometime earlier than that, and then adjust it, apply the ARCA index, do something that starts from real market data.
Agreed. And if you look at the Sprott opinion, they do look at Helio as well. And my problem was that, for the same reason as Shanta, that it was tainted by the market's views of what was happening and what the expectation of what was happening in Tanzania around that time. So it was very hard to find a time, given the position, to find an untainted view of Helio, and then decide what uplifts and what adjustments to make in order for it to be appropriate. It felt very subjective to then start applying uplifts to it, because it was tainted at the time. What then to do? Yeah, in hindsight, it would have been more helpful to include that in my report. The only thing that I can point to is in my second report, at about page 45. This is taken from the Sprott. They were looking, it's slightly backwards, but they looked at the US dollar, the multiples for per resource and per reserve. And what I used it here was to compare to Shanta, and actually I should have gone a step further and explained how it possibly could be used. So Winshear was about 5 to 9 times smaller than Shanta at the time, and Shanta itself, as you can see from the graph on the kind of a couple of pages earlier, depending on your date, was well below the ARCA Gold Miners Index. And actually there is, for example, like a junior gold miners index, which is actually even slightly above, although bounces around a lot more, slightly above the gold miners index, although it includes less variables, which is why I use the ARCA's gold mine. So if you wanted to do Winshear, you could then increase it first to get up to the level that Shanta was, which is what the Sprott is kind of suggesting, and then increase it for the ARCA gold mine, which would mean increasing it by about, I don't know, 10 to 18 times the figures in here. But that's very subjective.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll interrupt.
So my 10 to 18 times is based on the ratio of Shanta to Winshear in my final column of the table, which was the Sprott opinion of it being kind of undervalued in relation to Winshear in relation to Shanta, and then look at the comparison of Shanta in relation to the ARCA Gold Miners Index, which is probably, depending on your date, about 50%.
When you say it was that Winshear was undervalued, you're referring to this per resource ounce valuation. Why was that? Why was it valued so much at so much less per resource ounce?
Because of the market's expectation of what was going to happen to it. It is.
Help me here.
Yeah.
Shanta was working in places other than Tanzania, is that right? Or is it not? I don't know.
To be fair, I'm sorry, I don't know either. I think at the time it was mainly in Tanzania. I'm aware now it has other operations. Apologies. I'm aware now it has other operations. I'm not sure at the time it had much more beyond.
I guess my point is that if they were both either exclusively or mainly in Tanzania, then the events in Tanzania wouldn't explain fact that Winshear was trading at a discount to Shanta?
The financial implications on Winshear, that it was in such financial difficulties, I think, is another kind of explanation of the difference between them. It had financial constraints, it needed the money. It couldn't raise finances.
Why could you not take the Winshear price, pick a time before the market started to be afraid of what was happening in Tanzania, say sometime in 2016? Why could you not do that? Take the Helio price then, and then escalate it with the ARCA index?
I didn't look into it. I didn't see how widely traded the Helio shares were. The only things that I haven't done that.
Okay. Looking at the cost approach you did take, I got, I think, 3 questions on that.
Yep.
And the main one has to do with the return, the assumed return on the invested cost. Now,
Yep.
Looking at this as sort of a version of replacement cost, and if I were looking to go into this area and start exploring for minerals in the SMP area, I'd consider what it would cost me to do what Winshear did, what Helio did,
Yep.
and I'd be ready to pay that much to Winshear to take over what they had done, escalated to current dollars.
Yep.
But why would I do more than that? Why would I pay Winshear more than the current dollar cost of what they had already done?
I guess it was also the kind of the time value of doing it. So I haven't escalated to the current cost, to the current replacement cost, which would increase, in a way that's part of the return. And then it took them many years to do this. So I think you're paying for being able to walk in
And do it
and
immediately.
have it and do it immediately with the geological database there and the knowledge and being able to do it immediately.
Okay. I just want to, I think I know the answer to this, but I just want to be sure. When I've been involved in other cases where there's a cost valuation being done, part of it is to, it has a depreciation element. You take the asset, inflate it to current dollars, depreciate it because you're not getting a new asset, you're getting an old asset. I take it there's no depreciation applicable here just because of the nature of what we're dealing with?
Agreed. All there was is probably an increase in the costs if you did it today, and I didn't increase.
Okay, I didn't think depreciation would be appropriate. Last question.
Yeah.
For interest,
Yes.
why Canadian Prime plus 2? Why not just Canadian Prime?
I used a prime premium often in cases I've seen LIBOR plus 2, and I was working with something similar. I can very easily rerun the calculation at Canadian Prime.
Yes.
It just seemed as a suitable interest rate when I was looking at the time on what I had done before. Mr. Mogakala then used it too, so I didn't even revisit it in my second report. I have just seen frequently LIBOR plus 2% when LIBOR existed, and so I went for.
When we had
the right.
LIBOR, I don't know about
That's
Canadian
right.
Prime,
Yeah.
but my recollection is US Prime anyway was usually a good deal higher than LIBOR. And I'm just going to
Yeah.
make an assumption Canadian Prime is higher than what
It's,
LIBOR would be
very-
if we still had it.
Yeah, which doesn't happen in Canadian law. I used what I considered to be a commercially reasonable rate. I can run it at a different rate, absolutely.
Okay.
I can run it within about 5 minutes. I have the appendix open.
That's all I've got for now. Thank you.
I have seen situations where banks have issued an interest rate of prime minus 1.
Really.
Did you not? Why didn't you take that into consideration?
I haven't had that experience, particularly in investment treaty cases, but as I said, it was just doing what I thought to be a commercially reasonable rate, and I would be delighted to run it at a variety of different rates if it would be an assistance. Really, it's in a spreadsheet. I can do it within a matter of seconds to add or take off.
Okay. And taking into account what my co-arbitrator has said, these various factors,
Yep.
if you had taken those factors into account, would your figure of damages have been lower?
Apologies, taking what factors into account?
The situation, the scenarios that my co-arbitrator put to you in preparing your report, right? You remember?
Sorry, if I'd taken the Helio share price into
Yes.
account. I haven't run the calculation. I don't know.
Is it possible for you to do that?
Yes.
Okay. How soon can you do that?
Well, maybe you will think about whether you want to ask this or
Sorry.
not.
Well,
I'm sorry.
okay. The answer is probably overnight. Within a couple of hours, I could do, or for closings, or however it would help. Be very happy to assist.
Anything further? I'm sorry. Talking about the rate of return, I have a conceptual difficulty with rate of return because to me this implies success of a project.
Yep.
And precisely here we have this uncertainty because of the level of development of the project. So we are not going into income approach and DCF.
Yep.
And we take cost approach, and then we add some kind of a return to costs, which is awkward to me. I have more specific questions afterwards, but
Yep.
as a matter of concept, what do you tell me in answer to my concern?
That the kind of for me, I got comfort from the mining industry standards by looking at the kind of the
Yes,
multiple.
I can see
Sometimes
that,
you can
yeah.
have a return of less than one, when and that is particularly for exploration stage problems. The Sinval code is the suggestion. So my comfort was taken from that. It's not just that the investors expect a
Yeah.
return and the evidence. It's the categorization that's
Yeah.
quite a standard mining industry for exploration stage projects.
Yeah, I can see that. Then the question is whether we, as lawyers, assess damages
Yeah.
in a dispute, whether we have to take that from the industry standards or not,
Yeah.
or whether it's a legal issue. But
yeah.
I thought you would say that.
Sorry, apologies. And
That's fine.
I took my information
That's
from like the geologists, Professor Maruma or Mr. Williams.
I have asked myself whether the word return was just not a good word for something that, however, needs to be compensated.
Yeah.
And I think you just said before that you did not, your figures are not inflation adjusted,
Agreed.
right? So that probably would be a reasonable adjustment to get to the value of the
Yeah.
costs at the time of a assumed transaction.
I completely agree.
And then the second aspect
Yep.
is probably the fact that a buyer would be ready to pay something more because she saves the time of going through the exploration.
Exactly. The
him
substantial.
herself.
Apologies. Exactly. It's the timing and the kind of the risk element that you are hitting the exploration that they went through the right and the wrong areas, and then the geological databases that was the end result.
Yeah. You have explained in your written statements, and you have confirmed today that you have taken the SMP project as a whole.
Yes.
And although you know that there are prospecting licenses that were not canceled, may have expired in the meantime, but that's
Yes.
a different issue, were not
Yes.
canceled. You have not considered this in your valuation because you considered that this would, or you were instructed to value the entirety of the project on the basis of the argument that the cancellation of the retention licenses made the rest of the project valueless. Now, if the tribunal were to consider that somehow these licenses still had some value, do we have any indication in your report that would allow us to assign some value to these licenses?
No, not from my report. The only thing that I've heard is Mr. Williams's evidence that it was around 90% of the costs.
I've heard that too,
So that
yes.
was all I could say is potentially about 10% of the costs, which I haven't
But that
checked.
is not something that you have seen from the financial statements or from the quarterly reports, or where?
The financial statements only distinguished the prospecting licenses for, I think, 2 years, well, maybe like 2008 and 2009, possibly 2010. And there were very few amounts. Actually, I think there was nothing in 2008 and it distinguished it. And then 9 and 10, there were a few amounts going through. And a little bit of the acquisition costs were related. I think about 400,000 of the acquisition costs were related to one of the prospecting licenses. It states that the rest of the financial statements don't distinguish between any more than kind of Tanzania or potentially Saza and Mongolozi. It doesn't go down into the different licenses. You would need to add up which is, it's doable, but you'd have to add up the 514 records of the mining licenses to see whether Mr. Williams's view of about 10% is correct, and I haven't done that. I mean, but it is doable if that would be helpful.
About the interest rate, do you not add percentage points when it is not an interbank loan? LIBOR is an interbank rate, right? So then you take the solvency into account of the debtor, and depending on that, you add percentages or not? Or do I misunderstand this?
I can. I went very simple and just went for a commercially reasonable rate of Canadian Prime Plus 2. I didn't have the information.
Yeah, but my
on
question
Winshear.
is, why does a commercially reasonable rate have percentage points added to the rate? No,
Yes.
it might not be that important here,
Yes.
but is it? You don't have an explanation to that. Okay, good. Maybe that's more a question for a banker. If we need an update of your valuation with some specifications that the tribunal would have to provide, you would be available to perform that?
I would be delighted.
If we get to
perform.
it?
I would be delighted to adjust using
Fine.
the
So I'll
information.
ask the same question to the respondents witness
course.
afterwards.
Of course.
Anything further on the claimant side? No? Nothing from the respondent? Then, Mrs. Wall, thank you very much for your explanation. So we need to plan for tomorrow now. The idea is that in the morning we will hear the respondent's quantum witness, and then the tribunal was planning to put some questions to the parties now that you could consider. They may just be clarifications about how your case is articulated, so to make sure that we understand it correctly. And then in the afternoon, you could answer these questions. We had provided that each party would have an hour. So if the questions do not take an hour, you could take the hour just to summarize what or highlight whatever you wish. We don't think we need a proper closing. We will have post-hearing briefs and we can discuss tomorrow what they should contain. But if that would be the tribunal's proposal. I should also say that the questions, of course, can be answered tomorrow, but if you need to double-check things or your answer is not definitive by tomorrow, you can always elaborate in the post-hearing, in the writings. So I should say that now, so you know this is not the last chance. It is, there will be a written opportunity after the hearing. Is this fine as an outline of the program tomorrow? Yes?
Yes, Madam President.
Yes, good. So then the tribunal had some questions for both parties, and I should say, as always, that these are questions that occurred to us listening to the evidence. It does not mean they are relevant. That does not mean that in the end we will have to address them. So please don't over-interpret what the questions mean. And then we should also say that we may have some additional questions tomorrow that deal with quantum. However, since we have heard only one witness now about quantum, we thought we should not ask these questions now, but we should ask them all together after having heard both sides' views on quantum. So having premised the questions with these caveats, we have one question that's specifically for the respondent. It seems obvious from your submissions, both written and oral, that you challenge the tribunal's jurisdiction. But when we look to your request for relief, there's nothing about jurisdiction there. It only talks about the decision on the merits. So maybe you want to add something so that we have a clear record of what your request for relief is. It is already implied in the sense, it's not implied, it's expressed, but not in the request for relief in the rest of your submissions. Another question is for the claimants. We understand that your case is first for expropriation, and the expropriation was effected in 3 steps. The first one is the amending legislation in 2017. The second one is the January 2018 regulation, and the third one is the December 2019 tender. We understand that in respect of 2017 amending legislation, you base your claim on all the different measures that the amending legislation, all the different elements of the amending legislation. That, of course, affected mining operations such as BTLs. Your case is then also claims an FET breach or FET breaches, I don't know, based on the same 3 steps. Then you mention in a footnote in the memorial, and that's footnote 621, that you claim also on other provisions of the BIT, including full protection and security, but you're not expanding on this on in any of your written submissions unless we misunderstood you. So the question is, do you maintain this, and how much do you expect the tribunal to look into this? It is true that your opponents, I don't think, have replied to this because it was just a mention. So that is the first point. It's more like a confirmation point, so that we're sure that we understand your claim correctly. Then the next question is, you have used as a date of valuation, as a primary date of valuation, the tender in December 2019. We understand that thereby you're saying that the expropriation was effective then, because that is when it became permanent, you're saying. Now, what if the tribunal were to find that, and this is really an if, because I don't know what we will find, right? But if we were to find that the cancellation of the existing retention licenses in January 2018 is the expropriation, what happens then to the other steps, the 2017 and the 2019 step? Are you saying they're FET breaches, or they're still part of the expropriation? I mean, that maybe you explain it, but it would help us certainly if you can expand on this. And then, of course, the question would then be, what about the other steps, and what in respect of damages? There's then another question that is a question for both parties, is the Article 6.1 and 6.2 of the BIT has a guarantee framed in minimum standards of treatment, including FET, but it's framed as minimum standard of treatment in accordance with international law. And the question is, does that standard provide for protection of legitimate expectations? Now let me just check with my co-arbitrators. Have I correctly summarized what we... Is there an additional point?
And again, this is trying to get clear on claimant's case. If whatever valuation date we might pick, if we find there's an expropriation here, I'm just talking about the expropriation claim, whether it's 2019, 2018, explain how, if at all, we take into account events that happened before that date that would have an effect on the value of the asset on that date. Are we to look at a valuation in 2017 and somehow ignore what's happened that has lowered the value of assets between 2017 and 2018 or 2019? If not, why not? That's all.
Yeah, as I mentioned, we may still have questions in respect of valuation, more specific ones tomorrow, but we'll save those. Fine. Parties have questions about the questions, then this is the time to ask them.
Just maybe one comment. I think many of these questions are of a rather legalistic nature or would require legal submissions. At least that's how we interpret them without having given too much thought of them. Not the quantum ones, which I think we understand, but the others. And I mean, we are very happy to give you oral submissions on those. But is the idea that we would also expand on these legal concepts in the PHBs?
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that there would be PHBs, and if you cannot cover it all tomorrow, that is not a problem. There may be legal questions. I'm not sure they're legalistic.
Sorry, I correct myself. They are probably legal questions. Legal questions, yes.
Yes. Accepted, yeah. But some are just making sure that we understand the way you have framed your case, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So,
thank you for
but
the
they can be, you can expand on these matters in the post-hearing briefs. We'll have to discuss tomorrow what the content of the post-hearing briefs, whether we would limit them to a certain number of pages and what and the like. But that we can do tomorrow at the close of the hearing. Any other questions on the questions?
No, thank you.
On the respondent side, any
Yes,
clarification needed?
Madam President, I think on our side for now, we cannot have any comment. But as you rightly pointed out, we will take the questions and have a look at them, and we will see on whether or not the time allocated for us tomorrow will be sufficient. But at least we would request the Secretariat that we are provided with the transcript as soon as possible, because we could not capture everything as it was stated. But tomorrow we will be able to comment on the questions. But
maybe you get the transcript tonight, but if you want me to repeat something, I can.
No, not now, Madam President. We'll be able to get it. We know you are tired, but we'll be able to get it, and then we'll have a look at the questions and then see how lengthy submissions would want to. Then we'll be able to comment tomorrow.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Anything further that you would like to raise now?
No, Madam President.
No? No?
Not
Fine,
on our
then
side.
I think we're all set for tomorrow, and I wish everyone a good evening. And I think tomorrow we can start at 9:30, or is there a wish that we start at 9?
As you wish, Madam President.
How long do you think you will need for the cross-examination? I mean, it's not a commitment as usual.
Probably up to 3 hours.
Yeah. 3 plus 2, 5. No, I think we can. 9:30 is fine, I think, because if you have 3 hours, I mean, if we add 2 hours it gives 5. We add 1 hour for discussion is 6, and that's not a problem. We have been doing this all these days. So it will work fine. Good. Then we close for the day. Goodbye to everyone.